Today, I want to talk about intrafamilial child torture because I feel like intrafamilial child torture, ICT, is what's the short version, which is what I'm going to say from now on because I can barely say intrafamilial child torture.
I was impressed that you were already saying it
like
that
3 times
easily.
in a row, yeah. So I would say ICT is a very good sum up of like what I experienced in my life. And then after I was put in foster care, of course, systemic injustices. But in doing research with ICT and going through therapy myself, I just started therapy in February for CPTSD and major depressive disorder. I realized that as an adult, I struggled with so many things, behavioral problems like a toddler, and I couldn't understand why I was not able to keep these healthy relationships, friendships. I was losing friendships. In foster care, couldn't stay with a family. It was just very unstable. And I couldn't understand or put a finger on exactly why I was behaving this way, because when I would look back on my childhood, I knew obviously I was in foster care. So obviously my childhood was not normal, but what happened to me was not that severe, right? Like when I think of child abuse, I'm thinking of, a child called it sort of scenarios. And I didn't experience that in my opinion. And so when I got put in foster care and I was finally in a safe place and I was with a safe family, and then even after that, I went on to college and I'm safe, and then I'm married and I'm having kids and my whole world is still crashing down. It was finally when my therapist looked at me and said, "You were tortured." And I was like, what do you mean tortured? Because in my mind, when we think of torture, we're thinking of things like waterboarding. We're thinking of, the worst things that you can think of in horror movies, like all of these things. I think to sum it up, when we think of torture, we think of me as the torturer. I'm going to inflict the most amount of physical and mental pain on you as I can in this very moment in time, like whether it be for a day or for a week. And I have learned through therapy and through doing research on the different punishment styles my parents would have, that it's actually torture. And these things, just because they are not like beating you black and blue or waterboarding you, these things actually do psychologically damage the brain and change the brain chemistry the same way as a child being beat with a bat or, being gassed out in a bathroom like, David Pledger. And
like, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Exactly.
And when I think back, like a lot of the things that I share on my TikTok, I will get so many comments being like, "Oh my God, if this is abuse, then I had it the worst," and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't think people realize when it comes to intrafamilial child torture, it's intrafamilial. So it's not that I have gone out and I've got this captive and now I'm going to torture them and brainwash them into, whatever. It's a generational thing. It started with my grandparents. For instance, I'm learning a lot about my family through sharing my story and stuff. I do have family members that reach out to me and, disclose some things with me about my family that help me put puzzle pieces together. Specifically, when it comes to child sexual abuse being part of intrafamilial child torture, especially in my life, and I know others can relate, is it started as far back as I can go. My stepfather is the one who sexually abused me, and my mother knew about it and she did not do anything to stop him. And the time that I finally realized that what he was doing was wrong and all of those feelings that I had about, our cuddling, our kissing, or like his groping me and things like that, I understood those feelings were validated and me feeling like this is not okay. When he came into my room when I was in 8th grade and he closed the door behind him, I think it was just me, him, and my mom, and maybe my little brother home. And that was already a red flag because, like, why are you coming in my room and closing the door when mom's here? And he sits on my bed and he just sits down on the corner of my bed. I'm sitting down in front of my mirror on the floor. I have my scene hair. I was scene back in middle school. Loved it. And I was straightening it, scrolling on my phone because I had weird vibes already. I thought I was about to get in trouble for something because I was constantly getting in trouble. I was always in trouble for this or that, right? Like I didn't clean the dishes the right way, or my brothers would pee on the floor. And if I wouldn't clean up their urine, then I would be punished for that because that was for some reason my punishment, which actually also falls under the umbrella of ICT, using chores as like disciplinary measures or chores to make a child uncomfortable is psychologically abusing them. And he sits down on my bed. His fingers are crossed. I'm just waiting for whatever it is, because when I would be punished at this age, it would usually consist of me basically being grounded to my room like a prison cell. They would take away all of my decorations in my room. They would take away all of my bedding. They would take away all of my clothes, my hair stuff, makeup stuff, all of my extra things, as they would call them. And I would be given like my punishment wardrobe, which was really, really ugly, like for the time, clothes that they knew that kids at school would purposely make fun of me for wearing. They would also like take away my hair stuff. So like I couldn't do my hair. So I would look unkept going to school. And they would take off my door. I had no privacy, and we would be forced to sit like in the doorway of our room and not move. We couldn't move. We couldn't talk. We couldn't look up. We weren't allowed to go to the bathroom unless we asked, and we were like limited to a certain amount of time per day. We weren't allowed to go to sleep unless they said that we could, and we had to wake up when they said that we had to wake up. We weren't allowed to eat until like it was time to eat. And while we were eating, like we had to like sit away from where the living room was so that we couldn't even see a reflection of the TV. Very, very as close as they could get to like prison solitary confinement. Right. That's what they wanted to do. And so.
And this was your mom and your stepdad?
Yes.
Okay.
So my biological dad was in prison during this time. He actually just got released from prison in 2019. And so he was never present. He was never around. Like he would write me letters and stuff, but that's like the extent of what he could do. Mm-hmm. So I'm expecting like the hammer to come down and for me to be isolated, which was devastating for me because I hated being home. Me and my mom did not have a good relationship. We never ever did. I have always said I have one good memory with my mom. And I think it was when I was about 3 years old and we were living in this trailer park. I loved the trailer park. It had a playground. It was super cool. And we were dancing in the living room. I think she was pregnant with my little brother, and we were dancing to Shania Twain. And that was like the last time that I ever have a memory of her just like, I guess just like doing something with me ever. And after that, she just like shut down. I don't know what changed. I feel like maybe it was after my little brother was born and she had to go back to work or something. I'm not sure, but something changed and she just completely shut down, shut me out. And I didn't have a relationship with her at all outside of her telling me what to do. And then, you know, telling me that I'm not doing things the right way, punishing me, taking things away. So not being able to leave my house and being forced to basically be on display for, it could be a couple weeks, it could be just a couple days, was devastating because that meant that my only outlet, my only safe place would be school. And that outlet and safe place I would now be bullied at because they've created that environment for me to be bullied. So I really didn't have any safe place to do any of the thinking that they wanted me to do about the crime that I committed. I didn't even have time to think about why I was being grounded because I was just so busy trying to survive being grounded. And that really, really damaged me. So my heart was pounding out of my chest when he comes to sit down, but I definitely should have been pounding out of my chest for different reasons because I wish that he would have just grounded me. He started rubbing his hands together and he puts his hands on his knees and he says, so you know how you've been saying you want a job? And I immediately am like, oh, this is not bad news at all. This is actually great news. I was 13. I think I was 13, turning 14, and I had been wanting some extra money because I was just now getting into doing my makeup and stuff and dyeing my hair. And my mom, as I mentioned, had nothing to do with me. So she never taught me how to do my makeup. She never taught me how to do my hair. I learned how to braid by watching YouTube videos and stuff. And I knew that she wouldn't buy me any of the makeup that I specifically wanted. So I had been talking to my dad about wanting a job. So this was not a surprise to me at all. And I got really excited and he calmed down too. And so I was like, yeah, okay, we're good. We're good. I trusted him. And he said, well, I have a job for you. And I was like, okay. And he says, it's photography. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Because at this time I had been on Instagram, you know how we were back then, all of us were going to be Instagram famous. Mm-hmm. And I was way into photography, all about me and my selfies and my duck lips. I was going to be famous. And I thought, yeah, this is my chance. Like he sees my art. He sees my potential and he's finally giving me an opportunity. And clearly he's not involving mom because mom thinks that I'm a loser. And so that's where my brain went. And I completely trusted where this was going. So I'm like, great. Yeah. Photography. You know that I love taking pictures. And then he says, well, it's not going to be pictures. It'll be videos. And that's when like something in me just like turned. Like I remember like I almost feel like I matured that day. Like it was like my frontal lobe fully formed in that second because I was like, wait a second. That's weird. Like it's like all those internal alarm bells started going off. So I just got on my phone and I just started scrolling on Instagram, like kind of not really paying attention to him very much. And he kept talking. I wasn't responding to him at this point. I was just listening. And he went back to like rubbing his hands together and he's very nervous. And he says, well, it's not going to be photos. It'll be videos and you won't be taking them. You'll be in them. And I'm just, there's a long pause and I'm just still scrolling through Instagram. And I remember in this moment, like being really confused because I had like recorded myself before and like posted on YouTube before, like, you know, doing like whatever little kid stuff. And they never supported it. They always said that it was stupid and that it's dangerous and I shouldn't be doing things like this online because you never know who's out there. And so I was like getting really scared because I'm like, y'all are the ones who are always telling me not to do this. And now you're coming to me in private. And so I'm freaking out. I'm just holding my phone at this point, just scrolling. And he says, you'll be doing the videos with me. We'll just start out hugging and kissing around the house, just like we always do. But the less clothes you wear, the more money we'll make. And I remember being kind of like paused in that moment. Like it wasn't real. Like he didn't really just say that. Like I swore that I had made it up in my mind. Like it was like, I know what I heard. Like I know that he just said those words, but like maybe I'm not understanding. Like there's no way. And he says, you don't have to worry about anybody you know finding them or seeing them because they will be sold through my buddies at work and they'll be sold overseas. And so I just sat there in silence and he sat there in silence and I didn't say anything. I didn't really know, like, I knew that I didn't want to do it. And I knew that my answer was obviously no, but I didn't really feel like brave enough to tell him no. He had been like very physically aggressive with me before. He had tried to kill me twice in one day because I didn't want to do the dishes. So I felt like saying no to him over this could potentially, you know, put me in more danger if he was angry. Like when I didn't do the dishes, it was something so small. I was just laying in my bed, scrolling on my phone. I was 13. I was always on my phone. And he came running into the room. He was just angry. He and my mom fought all the time anyway. He was just angry. And he comes in there and he's like, you need to get up and do the dishes. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do the dishes, but like in a second, you know, me being a teen. And he's like, no, you need to do them right now. And so I'm like, no, like I'll get to it in a second. Like hop off my dick. Like honestly, like leave me alone. And he gets on top of me and he puts his hands around my throat and he just starts squeezing. And it was again, and like just like when he asked me to make child sexual abuse material with him, I was like, this isn't happening. Like it was like I was outside of my own body and I could like see myself on the bed, but it was like, I was just like completely unresponsive. And I think that's the part that has always disturbed me the most when I look back is that I didn't try to fight him off. I was like already so ready to just die that I was willing to let him kill me. And so he let go for whatever reason. I don't know why. And he told me just go do the dishes. So I start trying to walk to go do the dishes, but he interpreted my lack of oxygen to my brain walk as attitude. So he pushed me back up against the wall and he started strangling me again. And again, I wasn't fighting him off or anything. I was just going to let him do it. And I know that the only reason he did not finish killing me was because my little brother was standing in the kitchen and he didn't know. And I loved my little brother. And I had never seen him so traumatized in his life. He was barricading himself. So like the way the layout was, it was kind of like a rectangle. And so like the dining room and kitchen were connected and he had me against the wall in the dining room. And my little brother was in the kitchen and he had himself like behind the fridge door with an orange cup of milk. He loved milk. And I remember after he was done strangling me, I didn't realize Hunter was there yet. And he throws me down over the gate that was blocking between the dining room and the kitchen because we had dogs. And once I hit the ground, I looked up and I saw Hunter, and he was just sobbing and like shaking. And my stepdad walks past me and he goes to his room and slams the door. Like, oh shit, I was caught, you know? And I remember I looked at my little brother and I pointed at him from the floor and I said, you saw that. You remember that you saw that. And he ran to his room. And I was terrified that, you know, my little brother wasn't in my room with me when my stepdad asked me this. My mom wasn't in the room with me, and I didn't fight him off the first time he tried to kill me. So I sat silently. I didn't agree. I just was listening. He gets up from the bed and he says, I'll give you a couple days to think about it. And one more thing, don't tell your mom. And he leaves the room. I literally don't remember anything else from that day. Outside of that evening or some point in the day, I called my friend, who I'll call Sam. I called my friend Sam because he was the like closest person that I had, like as a male. And I felt like I needed to like talk to a guy about this and be like, is this normal? Or like, am I overreacting? Like, is this something like a dad should do? And I called him after, I don't even know how many hours had elapsed. And looking back, I don't know why my mom didn't come check on me. Like nobody came to check on me. And I think that that's really common with abuse survivors, whether it's sexual abuse or any form of abuse, is so many people, I think, have this misconception about like how life is after the abuse happens. And we hear about it all the time, like how survivors like are thriving in life or maybe not so much thriving yet. But like after he asked me to make child sexual abuse material with him, I was the only one, it seemed, to be affected by it. It was like life just continued as normal. And no one came to check up on me. And I was completely distraught. It was like I heard my little brother playing his video games in his room because it was right next to mine. My older brother was probably out with his friends. And everybody is just continuing life as normal while mine has just been completely flipped upside down and no one even knows. And so I called Sam and I told him, hey, my stepdad just asked me to make porn with him and I don't know what to do next. And all I remember him saying is, Danielle, you need to hang up the phone with me and call the police. And I couldn't do it. I don't know why I couldn't do it, but I feel like maybe even though like, I think hearing somebody else say like, wow, like that's really bad. I think it really put in perspective, like how much danger I was in, but I wasn't ready to face it yet.
Yeah. And you were scared.
Very scared. He was my dad. Like he raised me since I was 2. And I would like to just talk about him for a second. You know, I've not really talked about how I felt about him ever, but.
Take your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He was my hero. I loved my stepdad. I would even, before I started therapy, I would even tell my husband, if my husband like upset me, I would be like, you know, my stepdad would do X, Y, and Z. And I wish that you would do things like my stepdad. My stepdad would make me feel so special. He would take me, you know, like he would be in the middle of working on anything. And I would say, I want a soda, daddy. And he'd be like, okay, let's go get one. If my brothers did that, it was a no. Like I was so special. He made me feel like the center of his universe. And then he completely destroyed that. And
what, like at what age did you feel that shift?
I think like right at 12 and 13.
Okay.
It was 7th grade. It was 7th grade when I realized like all of the love that he had for me and the love that I had for him was not, well, the love I had for him was very normal love for a dad. But the love that he had for me had changed.
Mm-hmm. But you said before that, like even when you were younger, he was still touching you and...
Yeah.
Okay. So it kind of was always there.
Yes.
Okay.
So like I didn't, and that was like the hardest part was
right.
like that day that I realized like, oh my God, I'm in danger. You know, when Sam said that to me, I started thinking about our relationship, all of the aspects of our relationships and all of the different things that he had done that I had made excuses for or thought was normal. For instance, I think like one of the very first things that was kind of like, all right, I think I need to pay a little more attention was I was getting my first smartphone and he was giving me his old one, which not a big deal, whatever. But he decided to give it to me, just me and him alone in the car together. And he gave it to me. He said, here's your new phone. Like, I know that you've been wanting one. Me and your mom got new ones. So here's this one, mine. And I completely deleted everything off of it. It's completely factory reset. But there's just one picture on there that I need you to delete. And I'm like, okay. And yeah, he goes, yeah, it's just a picture of my pecker that I'd send your mom. And I remember looking at him and I was like, I don't want to see that, Dad. Like, can you just delete it? Or like, I can wait till we get home. I really don't want to see that. And he hands me the phone and he says, no, you have to delete it right now. And again, I was like, I'm not actually in any danger. You know, in my head, if I'm just being honest, I was like, it is just a picture. You know, like he's not, like he doesn't have an erection right now. Like this is not like at me. This is okay. Like, it's okay. Like, it's just one picture. It's okay. And I would make excuses like that for all of the behavior that made me uncomfortable. And the earliest things that I can remember starting to be really uncomfortable with him by was like in 4th grade when I started wearing bras. And I remember going training bra shopping. And I was so excited to go training bra shopping. I was excited to get a Barbie bra because I'd seen them at Walmart. And I had to go with my mom and my stepdad. I don't know why, looking back, you know, like why my stepdad had to be there for that. But I did. And the entire time we're bra shopping for a 4th grader, training bras, he's holding them up saying, oh, how about these over the shoulder boulder holders? And just making all kinds of just sexualizing comments about my experience with getting my first bras. And he would do that with my underwear. I actually got nicknamed Ruffle Butt in my family because I had gone underwear shopping and I chose underwear that had ruffles on them because I thought they were cute. And he decided to, we had a little family get together and they decided to just bring that up to everybody. And everybody just started calling me Ruffle Butt, talking about my underwear. And so it was very normalized in my family to talk about my body in any way, shape, or form that anybody saw fit. And that is a huge key factor in that intrafamilial child torture aspect, because it's not just that it was normalized for me. Like none of them actually ever saw anything wrong with it because it happened to them. They were sexualized as children. I even know one of my family members had disclosed to me recently that, my stepdad actually had sex with my mom's mom. Yeah, my grandma. It gets crazier. My other brother that lived with us, my older brother that I mentioned, actually used to be my cousin. And he was my sister's son. So my stepdad was married to my mom's sister and had my brother cousin thing. And then at some point had relations with his mother-in-law and then went to my mom. And I found out recently, like, because I've been talking to my therapist about this, right? Because we're trying to figure out like how far back does this go? And I found out recently through this family member that reached forward that my stepdad has actually been involved with my mom's mom, like that family forever, which just further shows like how deep this runs. They don't see an issue with what happened to me. They don't view it as sexual abuse. They don't view it as wrong because they had to do it. It was the only thing that they knew how to control me and control my behavior. And their perspective is that they were trying to, they say, like make me a good kid or something like that. But when it comes to intrafamilial child torture, it is breaking down that kid's psyche and you're trying to make that child think like you. You're brainwashing them into believing that these behaviors are okay. These behaviors are normal and everybody else is wrong. And it just wasn't working for me. I don't know why, kind of like we talked about earlier, like you can grow up in the same house and then two different people. That's kind of like what happened with me and my little brother is like, I don't know why, but like the brainwashing, it never worked on me ever. I always saw through it. My mom, maybe it's because of my mom. My mom was molested when she was a little girl. And nothing was ever done about her abuser. And he was a cousin. So in the family too. And she made it her goal. This is what she says, her goal to make sure that that would never happen with me. And so she took very traumatic avenues to try to teach me about the dangers and who might be an offender, who might abuse me. She would do so by showing me snuff films, which I'm not sure. Do you know what a snuff film? So a snuff film, and I'm sure people are not going to like my definition because, but the way I like to describe a snuff film is it's an illegal film. It's a real life movie, for lack of a better word, of somebody being murdered, or other things happening, torture. But she would show me these videos from the dark web and force me to watch them as young as I think 10 and 11 years old. I remember videos of women being beheaded by men and things like that to show me why she's so strict. This is why I don't let you have internet access, even though she did. This is why I'm so strict about who you talk to on your phone, even though she never stopped me from talking to anybody or being groomed. And so it was never about protection. It was always part of the brainwashing. Mm-hmm. She enjoyed watching snuff films. She enjoyed watching and listening to the morbid, bad true crime documentaries, enjoyed and got off to listening to the Toy Box Killer audio. And she forced me to listen to that when I was a little girl as well, to show me the kinds of men that can be out there. And
quick question.
Yeah.
And you said that so your stepdad you said it was normal for him to be hugging and kissing on you throughout the house. And was that done in front of her as well?
Absolutely.
And she never really said anything?
She hated me for it. She was jealous of me. And it permeated in every aspect. My family members would come to me and I was always just a very depressed kid. I just was always very depressed. And my family members would cheer me up by saying, "Don't worry, Danielle, you just have to wait till you're 18. Your mom's just jealous of you." And I never understood what that meant until recently, and being in therapy, is that she saw me as competition because I was competition. I shouldn't have been, but at that point I was. And she knew that. And I think when I told her, because I did end up, which I guess I'll get to, telling her about what he asked me to do, she didn't seem she seemed surprised. But she seemed more, that look that people get when it's what they thought the worst could happen was going to happen and it happened. Mm-hmm. It was that look. And I didn't get in trouble. She just sent me out of the room when I told her. And I told her about 2 weeks after he had asked me. And that was about 1 week after he had texted me, about 1 week after all of this was going on, just the nothingness after, just the confusion and what is going on? I was very confused for that week after. And I was sitting in the living room. I was laying on the couch and he was sitting in the rocking chair. And he texts me. My little brother Hunter is sitting on the floor in front of the TV. And he texts me from the rocking chair. I'm laying down on the couch. And he says, "So do you want to do it?" And I just text back, "No," right away. I found my courage and my boldness. I didn't have to, yes, he was right there next to me, but what could he say out loud right now? I felt safe. Hunter's there. If you're going to say anything, then you're going to have to mention that you just asked me to make that. And so I text no, and he rolls out of this chair and he goes, "I'm so proud of you. It was just a test." And I was like, what? What? And so exactly. I was even more so a test for what,
Yeah.
And so it was, again, another week long of being in a trance, I guess is the right word to say. I do have the right language for it now. I was struggling with depersonalization and derealization, which is a dissociative disorder that can happen. And basically your brain makes your body just go on autopilot to protect itself. And during this week, it peaked. It was bad. I was making sandwiches and having conversations with people and not even remembering anything about them. I was just going through the motions. And at school, it would be so bad that I would be sitting in class and I would look around at other people around me and think to myself, I'm not even here right now. None of this is even real. I could stand up on my table and scream as loud as I want. I could stomp on it nobody would even look at me. Like, this is all just a dream, a really bad dream. And I would stare at my hands and they would look like way like longer than like a normal perspective. And it was freaking me out. Like everything, my actual reality was like changing because I was under so much stress.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, like kind of going back to something you mentioned, you know, it's interesting that you were able, and I'm a huge believer in having, you know, just your gut telling you something. And you clearly had that. Like you knew, like your intuition, your gut knew something was wrong, but it could have easily been the other way where that's how you were raised. So that was your normal.
Exactly.
Like being treated that way and having that happen, just like you said, generation after generation, like you technically didn't know any different. Like that is how you were raised. So the fact that you knew in your gut, like this is wrong, like something feels wrong, like through all of it seems, you know what I mean? Like all of it made you feel uncomfortable.
And I did, and I don't know what it was.
Right.
Like, and I don't want to, but I want to give credit to my mom because like, I think that she just needs to, I think she's a little bit in too deep, you know, like she can't admit that she failed, and that is a very hard thing to admit. But I wish that she and any other like mother or parent that has a child that has been abused, if it's by your partner, like whatever it is, if you're feeling like, oh, I failed, like it's not your failure. Like you cannot prevent your child from experiencing abuse, but you can be there to support your child through it afterwards.
Right.
And that is where she dropped the ball. I just don't think she had it in her. I don't think that she could face the music, that she let it happen.
Yeah.
And she could never get to a place where she understands that it wasn't her fault. But what was her fault was the lack of support afterwards.
And I think too, that jealousy aspect, I mean, I feel like that's something that you hear about, that it's like in a twisted way, people are viewing it all wrong. Like rather than, okay, this is abuse and this is wrong. It's like, well, why is he giving her attention in a sexual way and not me?
Exactly. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Like whenever we think about how mothers, a lot of times it's mothers can be very resentful of their daughters and stuff. And it's never our fault, like ever. But I remember like my stepdad cheated on my mom, and this is his cheating on my mom. He cheated on my mom after he had initially asked me to make child sexual abuse material with him. And after I told my mom, and she just, you know, took it and sent me out of the room, and I didn't get in trouble for lying or anything like that.
When you told her about it, did you guys have a conversation at all?
It was a weird, like I said, like we're not close at all. And she could tell like something was off because like I said, like I was off. I was like basically in a trance. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what gave you the courage to tell her?
I think that I just was scared of her because she stopped me in the kitchen. I can't remember like what I was doing. I was in a trance, a walking daydream, right? And I remember she like grabbed me by my arm and like pulled me around, like looked at me, and she was like stern and serious and was like, "What's going on with you?" And I was like, "Nothing." And she's like, "No, I can tell something's going on with you and you need to tell me." And I was like, "Okay, well, like, can we go to your room?" And their room was like a sanctuary. Like we were not allowed to go in the room. Like if you were invited in mom and dad's room, that's a big deal. So she let me in, and I sat down at the edge of the bed, like on the very end, and she was in the dead center. And she already just looked irritated. So I was like, already like, oh my gosh, like you're not going to believe me anyway. Because anytime in my life, if I ever told her that I felt uncomfortable by anything, I was being overdramatic or I was just begging for attention. Like my little brother and my older brother would stare at my chest a lot to intentionally just try to upset me, which it upset me because I was being sexually abused and groomed by their dad. But they didn't know that. They just saw that it irritated me, and they're being my brothers, so whatever. But my mom knew, and they would stare at my chest, and I would get so upset, start crying about it and stuff. And she would just yell at me saying that I'm just asking for attention and I don't even have anything to be staring at anyway. So I just need to let it go. And so I was really scared because, especially with the fact that he had said, "Oh, it's like just a test." I'm like, okay, well, like she's going to buy that one, you know, because like I am such a bad kid. Which is a whole thing in and of itself. Like there's no such thing as a bad child. So I tell her everything, just like very cut and dry. I was just like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want dad to get in trouble. But dad asked me to make porn with him and told me that it would be sold at work and overseas. And like her face, like it just drained of life. And she calls him in and she looks at me and she's like, Okay, Danielle, repeat your whole story again. Yeah. And he was sitting behind her, and I was obviously on the edge of the bed. And I remember looking at him, and he, like, it was just like a look of pure hatred. Like, if she was not there, I really think that he could have just like ripped my head off of my body. Like, I don't think I had ever seen somebody look like so personally betrayed by somebody in my life. And I felt awful. And so
for her to put you on the spot like that.
Yeah. It was awful. I don't even remember exactly like how I reset it or anything, but I remember like after I was done, he didn't deny it. And that was the most confusing part, is like, he didn't deny it at all. He just leaned forward and he like fixed his face real quick. And my mom looked at him and he's like, well, yeah, I asked her to do it, but it was just to make sure she wasn't like those kinds of girls, you know? And then my mom just sent me out of the room into my room. And I don't know what they talked about. I don't know if they talked.
Right.
But I do know that like he was successful. He had recorded me and friends of mine through holes in my wall, and I had caught him. We had like the one end of the house was like the kids kind of area of like our bedrooms and like a bathroom and a playroom. And then on the other end was like the master bedroom and then the living room and dining room, kitchen. And so we had my room and then our kids' bathroom and then my brother's room. And there weirdly was like this hole that showed up in the bathroom wall, but like on my side of the wall when I was in middle school. And it just got bigger and bigger and then started burrowing into like my side of the wall until you could see straight through into my room. And like, again, it was just one of those things. I was like, oh, that's normal. Like, that's just weird. Just put toilet paper in it if it bothers you. And I would, but the toilet paper would always be gone. And I didn't, like, as a child, I didn't think like, oh, like it's my stepdad. I was thinking like, if anything, and not that this makes it any better, but I'm like, oh, it's probably just like my little brother being weird. You know, like my friends are over, he's curious, whatever. I could make excuses and I wasn't as creeped out. Until I had one of my friends over at my house, and she had been at my house a lot. I don't know why. My house is really boring, but she liked coming to my house. And she was very familiar with my stepdad. My stepdad liked her a lot. He would even let us, like in the summer times, build like mud pits, which is like a huge no-no. My mom, anti-fun, like she was the no fun police. So he would let us do like mud pits, and like that's all fun and good and stuff, except it would just be me and my friend allowed to be in the mud pits. And then he would take pictures of us, and like we'd be in our bikinis and stuff in middle school and never know where those pictures went. Yeah. And so that was always like weird, but I could brush it off until she was over at my house and we were up late at night dancing to some YouTube hip hop video and our matching Five Below, you know, the yoga shorts and sports bras, we were matching. And yeah, just having the time of our life. Everybody was asleep and we were going ham and we were sweaty. And it was probably like around midnight. And I was like, you know, I'm really thirsty. Are you thirsty? And she's like, yeah, I'm thirsty. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to go get us a bottle of water. So I leave the room. And as soon as I open the door, my stepdad comes out of our bedroom or our bathroom in just his boxers, the lights are off and his phone's in his hand. And before I can like process anything, he is in my face. You are too loud. Everyone is sleeping. What are you guys even doing awake this late at night? Blah, blah, blah. Go back to bed. So I just immediately am like, I'm not about to get strangled again. I'm closing my door. And my friend's like, why was he in your bathroom? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, don't they have their own? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and the lights were off. And I was like, But I didn't want to think about it too much. So I just was like, let's just go to bed. But then I know I'm skipping timelines a lot, right? About 2 years ago, I'm wanting to say closer to 3 now. I think it was in 2021. This was around the time that I finally decided to officially go no contact with my biological family, because I realized that this isn't like a one-off thing, right? It's not like my stepdad is like a one-off pedophile and everybody else just can't see it. I realized everyone else is in on it. Right. And they wanted me to be too. And I just can't do that. I had just had my first baby a couple months prior to this happening. So like my baby was a couple months old and she was finally at that age where she's sleeping through the night. And me and my husband were finally enjoying just some alone time together on the couch. And my mom starts calling me and it's like in the middle of the night. Like that's really weird for her. Cause like I've said, like we're not close. Like usually if she calls me, she's letting me know ahead of time and it's for a specific reason. And I noticed like in this call, it was like a group call on Facebook Messenger with like 8 other people. And some of them I didn't even know. And I'm like, what? And so I just ignored it because I'm like, oh, she probably like butt dialed me. Like I'm in the middle of watching Alone with my husband. I don't care about this right now. And she kept calling. So my husband's like, yeah, go ahead and answer it. And I do. And she is completely freaking out saying that my stepdad is stalking her, that she had to leave him because he was signing up for porn sites again. And she sent me some screenshots of these porn sites and literally, they're like hookup sites. And one of the options on these sites is teen hookup. Okay, so she's really upset about this. And she, in my opinion, was on some sort of a substance, just saying like really, really weird things. Like he's like watching her through like the light bulbs and stuff. So like she's on something, in my opinion. And then a couple days later, she's like a little bit more like level-headed. And she tells me that she found flash drives of his. And specifically, she sent me pictures of the flash drives. And I wish that I had saved, like when you're still in a trauma bond, you're trusting that this person's going to do what they say that they're going to do. And when she sent me the pictures, like the picture of the flash drives, they were red and silver and black. And like one was red and silver and the other one was black, 2 flash drives. And she told me that on those flash drives, she saw what looked like, in her words, Nathan having sex with underage girls. And she said, I can't really make it out. It's like really dark and grainy. And I said, Mom, is any of them me? Because he would give me benzos to like put me to sleep. I remember like our very first hunting trip he had taken me out on. I was super excited to go. It was archery season. So whatever season that is, but it was archery. I had been working on, shooting my bow and arrow. Like I really enjoyed it. I was excited. And he takes me out and it's really early in the morning. So super early. I knew that would happen though. And when we're about like 10 minutes out from our spot, he hands me some pills and he's like, here, you need to take these. They're going to help you stay awake. And I'm like, I feel fine. And he's like, no, like you need to take these. Like we're going to be out here for a while. It's going to be dark. Like you need to take these. And so I did. And I remember like getting out to the woods and I remember like walking up like a hill. And then I remember nothing else after that until I was home in my bed. And so gross to like see a couple years later, present day, I was able to look back on his Facebook and see these posts from his original Facebook. And he actually has a post that's still up. I have screenshots of it. That's still up from the day that he took me hunting. And he said, took something along the lines of like, took my baby girl out hunting today. Too bad the only thing that died was her legs. And I don't remember anything. And now my mom's telling me that she's got these flash drives of him raping girls on them. And I ask her, like, is it me? And she says, I don't know, Danielle, I can't deal with this right now. And I'm like, okay, well, like, you need to like turn those in. Like, I'm begging her, like, you need to go give those to the police. And I even, looking back, this is so stupid, but like, I was so desperate. I was like, I will turn them into the police. Like, you send them to me and I will take them to the police. Like, please do something. I was like, do you believe me now? And she said, yes. I just can't think of him that way. You understand, don't you? And I said, yes. I said that I understood her. But I didn't. I couldn't. But like, what else was I supposed to say? I didn't know what else to say. And that's when I realized, like, this wasn't a small thing. This wasn't like a little, like a hiccup in parenting. Like they were trafficking me. They were trying to take it even further. They may have. And I don't know.
So you never had access to those?
Never.
Flash drives.
And I told detectives, I actually was working with the Leadwood, Missouri Police Department, specifically with Christopher Heatherly, who is now fired and being charged with charges. I begged him to go try to get them. And all he did is go ask my parents if they owned flash drives. And they said no. That's it. It's gone now. Like, that's it. And that's the police work that we get to deal with. is they want the victims to get the evidence, but they don't want to help us get it, and they don't want to get it themselves. And so now whatever chance like I might have had at, maybe some personal justice with evidence and things like that, it's gone.
And it's confusing to me too that your mom, not that I think that she's a person that you should understand, you know what I mean? Because I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's capable. Like if you don't think the way that she does, you're not going to understand it, you know? But it's surprising to me that she called you and told you about it.
She's always confided in me.
Yeah, it's like odd. It's like she told you about it, but then isn't willing to give you access to it or do anything about it.
She's always been like two different people.
Yeah.
It's like when my stepdad was cheating on her, I loved that mom. And when she found these flash drives, I loved that mom because she seemed like she cared about me for a second. But like looking back, like I know that it was never about caring for me. It was about me caring for her. When my stepdad cheated on her, she was all up my ass, right? Like all of a sudden, all about me, because she was lonely and I could fill that void. She would have me go like log into my Facebook and stalk this girl that he was with and, bully her and make fun of her and stuff. And she was a young girl with a young daughter as well, which is a whole other thing in of itself, right? And that's the only time, like besides dancing to Shania Twain, that we were close was when he was hurting her. And I don't get why she just can't have enough confidence in herself to see like, look at the daughter you made. Like you are actively threatening me and stalking me and harassing me and I'm not backing down. Like you could do that too against the same man who hurt me. Like if he's hurting you, you also can do the right thing. And it's not easy, but it's hard to just hate her because like I feel really bad for her. I feel so bad for how broken. And that goes back to like that intrafamilial child torture. She doesn't see what happened to her as bad as it is or worthy of needing healed from because her mom, we all get fed the same. Well, I had it worse or so-and-so had it worse. And we never take a step back to just say, okay, well, like who cares if somebody had it worse? How did this affect me? One of my friends on TikTok actually had made this comment and I was like, wow, like that's so good is that a sprained ankle still hurts just like a broken bone. And like you're still allowed to be in pain. And it's like when we think about like intrafamilial child torture, child abuse, we are often dismissive of ourselves when it comes to maybe those lesser forms of abuse, maybe like low contact and no contact sexual abuse, because that's very much so a thing. And so we dismiss that and we say, maybe we're not worthy of healing, or maybe I'm not worthy of these labels. Because it's not as bad as it could have been. And I really feel like it's important that we are, educated in all of these different forms of abuse because it's a spectrum. And we recognize that like, probably the worst thing that ever happened to me was that probably like, I guess him strangling me, right? If like we're being logical, but that's not the worst thing that happened to me. I feel like the worst thing that happened to me was all of the betrayal and confusion. And a lot of people would like listen to that and be like, oh my gosh. But I don't think people realize like when it's your parents that are the ones already trying to divide your own mind and confuse you and gaslight you. And these are the same people that you're supposed to go to for guidance and trust. And at the drop of a hat, if they're just having a bad day, you're locked in your room or you're not eating or whatever it might be, or you might be forced into some sort of sex slavery. It's so confusing to not have anybody that is consistently saying, what's happening to you is wrong.
Right.
Like you mentioned, my mom would go through these bouts of like, nope, you're a liar, you're crazy. And then confiding in me. And it really took a lot for me, like obviously in therapy to realize like it's okay to not, I guess, feel bad for her anymore because that feeling bad for her was what was keeping me like wanting to connect with her.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like maybe there's a chance at change. And then like I mentioned to you earlier, like I had fallen in foster care into a super religious Christian family. And that didn't help my case at all. When I told my school and I was put in foster care, I just told my math teacher. I don't know exactly what like triggered me to report.
And how old were you?
I was in 9th grade.
Okay.
So I think I was 14 when I reported.
I just want to ask this before I forget, but do you think that any of his children were abused by him?
See, that like depends on like what somebody would count as abuse,
right?
You know, and that goes into that conversation of like people get so like their panties up in a knot, if you will, like about like labels and stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to like sexual abuse, it is such a spectrum. I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Because he exposed me and my little brother to pornography. That's no contact child sexual abuse. They were aware of child on child sexual abuse that was occurring. Didn't stop it. That's participating. And so many other things. I know, like, for instance, my older brother, when he first, like, when it got found out that he was watching porn, which, like, whatever, instead of just allowing that to be a private thing, like talking to him about it in, you know, like healthy ways or whatever, that conversation, how that needs to go between a parent and child, they made a joke about it. They made a joke about finding stiff socks in his room. And so, yeah, like, it wasn't just me who was sexualized. It wasn't just my normal, you know, growth that was sexualized. It was also theirs. And I don't know if they were ever, you know, like physically, you know, like sexually abused or not, but I absolutely witnessed a lot of low contact grooming and sexual abuse by sexualizing children and sexualizing normal things that children go through.
Right. And then how often do you remember him giving you pills to like put you out?
I only remember that one time, and I never went hunting with him ever again after that.
Okay.
But he would come in my room like late at night and stuff. And like, it's like, I have these memories of like, I don't know if maybe my brain blocked it out. I don't know. Maybe he could have given me something prior to, I'm not sure. But like, I have these memories of being asleep in my room. He would work like late shifts. He would be like on call. He did flagging and stuff for the road. I don't know, like road construction. So he'd be on call and he would get home late and he would come into my room and cuddle with me and like spoon with me late at night. And he would wear his work clothes and I would be usually like in a t-shirt and shorts. And it's like, you know, in the movies, like when somebody's watching something that they really don't want to be or they shouldn't be, and it's like in the middle and it's like ramping up, and then somebody comes out of the blue and just stops it. It's like, that's how those memories are for me.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of my memories with him are. And it always comes with this like lingering, like body sensation of like, just like dread.
Yeah.
And I don't have any like actual memories of him being penetrative with me. And the closest memory that I do have of that is he grabbed my vagina one time in a dog crate. And after he grabbed my vagina, he just stared at me, I guess gauging like the waters, see how I was going to respond. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? And then after he asked me to make the child sexual abuse material with him, the grooming really like slowed down a lot because I told my mom. And so like, I don't know what they talked about. Right. And that just so happens to also be when he cheated on her. So like, he was very like spiraling, like he's spiraling, losing his mind. And I feel like the cheating on my mom and then getting back with my mom is kind of what triggered me to report, because I remember that he started ramping up those grooming behaviors again. He would start smacking my butt, kissing me on the lips, saying that I kiss just like my mom. Just really ramping it up. Like I felt like I was dating my stepdad. It felt like dates. It didn't no longer felt like, oh, I was his special little girl. It felt like he was like trying to like make me his wife. And my mom was just like nowhere in the picture. And she's just always angry all the time. And so I remember I had a big fight with my mom about something. I can't remember what it was. And my friend, well, I'll call her Sarah. She had recently disclosed at the school that she was sexually abused by her stepdad. And the reasons for her getting taken away from her parents were like not very bad. And so I was like, if she could get taken away for that, then I could probably get taken away for this. And I had an argument with my mom, and I was just very much so in like a fuck all of you and fuck all of this. I don't fucking care. Like you can kill me or I'm leaving.
Like I'm done.
Don't care. Exactly. I was over it. I was being extremely reckless. I was sexting men online. I was even putting out our home address, like on chat rooms and stuff, being like, come find me, come whatever.
It's like a cry for help.
Exactly. I was just done. And I would talk to men online. And I really believed that like I would marry them and they were going to take me so far away from here. And this whole time I was being like punished for that too, because my mom would see some of these conversations. And instead of, like getting to the root of it, like, why are you feeling like this? What are you doing? Why are you trying to find love in these places? You're 12, you're 13 years old. It would be, oh my God, like you're such a whore. Why do you think these people actually see anything special in you? It was a breaking down of like my self-esteem and my character, and it worked. It worked. But I was done. I didn't care about myself at all. I was over it. And so I had a huge fight with my mom, and I just decided like, this is it. And the next day, my stepdad dropped us off at school. Or not at school, but like at the bus stop. And the way that they would do it is they would usually have us sit in the car with them if it was like raining or something. If not, we would just stand at the bus stop until they drove off. But when it came to my stepdad, I always gave him a hug and a kiss goodbye. Like that was like our thing, And so I'm in the car. I just have my headphones on blasting. And I knew that, like, I knew what I was about to do. And I felt like so powerful, but like not in an empowering way. I literally felt like I was about to like ruin everybody's life. And we get down to the bus stop and I immediately open my door and I just go straight to the bus, like the actual bus stop. And I don't give him a hug. I don't give him a kiss. I don't say goodbye. I don't say anything. And I even notice like when I get to the bus stop, even my brothers are like, that was weird. And I look up and I just saw him mouth, "You're not going to give me a kiss?" And he looked so heartbroken. Like he looked like I really like hurt his feelings. And I was like, what am I doing? Like I second guessed myself. I was like, he's not like done anything. Like he's not raped me like that I can think of.
Right.
He's not stuck his fingers in me. He's not made me touch him. Like he's not hurt me yet. So how can I do this to him? How can I do this to him? Because I didn't count the grabbing my vagina as wrong. It didn't matter that I felt uncomfortable because his intentions weren't to make me uncomfortable. So how I felt about it didn't matter because this is what he said. I didn't mean to. And I believed him and I wanted to. And he looked so sad. And so I got on the bus and I was just like a one-track mind, just listening to music until I could get to school. And I think my first class was my math class. I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I powered through until I got to my math class because I knew I wanted to talk to my teacher, Mr. Alfitch, for my 9th grade algebra teacher. He was like an angel to me that school year. I had obviously been going through a lot. And like, I'm like realizing now, like in talking about this, like I was diagnosed with syncope in my 9th grade year because I just kept fainting like randomly. Like I would just like faint and weird, just like fainting all the time. And I'm like looking back, realizing now, like I see like I was under so much stress and like that makes sense why. But he actually advocated for me to go to the doctor when I kept fainting and stuff because my mom wouldn't take me. I'm actually like hearing impaired. I have to wear hearing aids because my parents like just like they would hit me in my ears for fun as jokes. And my mom was just extremely neglectful. Like I said, I always thought I was over dramatic. I had something rotting in my left ear for like over a year, I want to say. And she didn't believe me every single time I said it hurt. So it just kept going on and on until finally she decided to look in there. And instead of taking me to a doctor, she got peroxide, tweezers, and a safety pin and scraped whatever it was out of my ear. And now I have hearing aids. So like this was like a very normal, like if she didn't think that I was like dying, then we didn't go. And so he advocated for me. And so I was like, if he could like get through to my mom here, then he probably can give me some good sound advice. Because at this point in time, I still wasn't sure if I was like overreacting. Right. I'm like,
you start to like convince yourself otherwise.
Exactly. Because he's so nice. Mm-hmm. Look at all the things that he's done for me.
Right.
Even when he and my mom were separated and he was cheating on her, he bought me a brand new phone. He didn't buy my brothers a new phone. Like he bought me I literally got to go to the store. We were poor. I got to go to the store and pick out whatever phone I wanted. And so it's like, you have all of these things that you can like point to and say, yeah, but like the bad times were only like these like few and far between moments, but like, that's how they get you. Mm-hmm. It's like, they're trying to just make you think of the good times and the bad times aren't that bad. And yeah, I just knew that I had to get like validation, I guess is the right word.
Yeah.
From somebody that wasn't a child, you know, like Sam or any of my friends. And so I was in class and I raised my hand. I'm like, I need to talk to you outside. He's like, yeah, what's going on? And I'm like so convinced that I'm overreacting. I'll never forget his face because I said it so casually. I'm like, I just don't really know what to do. My stepdad asked me to make porn with him and I said no, but now I'm scared he's going to make me do it. And he's like, you what? And I was like, yeah, like he asked me to make porn. He said that it would be sold like overseas to his buddies at work. Like I'm like thinking like he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like this is like
this is normal.
Yeah. Exactly. Like yeah, all dads do this. And he's like, no, like please go to the counselor right now and tell the counselor exactly what you just told me. I'll have somebody else send up all of your school supplies. You're probably not going to leave that office today. And I was like, oh my God. And it was like this weird liminal moment walking to the counselor's office because I didn't have to go. It was like at that point in time, they weren't expecting me and he was expecting me to be there. So like I could have just left and I could have just like, I guess like ran away and pretend like I didn't say anything at all. And that really would have upset my parents, right? But like at least then maybe I wouldn't have ruined their lives is what was going through my head. But I kept walking and I made it to the office. I did not want to. It was literally like I was like dragging myself.
Yeah.
You know, I just...
Because it's like I feel like it probably took so much for you to just tell him. And then it's like, okay, well, now I got to do it again. Now it's getting more serious.
Exactly. Like, yeah, that seriousness setting in is really...
Because you had that time to almost like second guess it in a way.
Yeah.
Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. My favorite holiday is right around the corner and I could not be more excited. And if you're wondering what that holiday is, it is in fact Halloween. Now, when it comes to Halloween, being scared is a fun thing. It's thrilling, it's exciting. It includes candy, costumes, literally all this fun, exciting stuff, which got me thinking about my fears that are not so fun and don't involve candy or costumes or all the other fun things I just mentioned, and are actually fears that I need to face and talk about. For example, my anxiety being one of those big ones. My anxiety is something that I have talked about on this show before and something that I have been dealing with for many years in my life now. There has been times where it feels better, times where it feels worse, times where it leads to panic attacks. Anxiety has a huge range overall, but none of it is too big or too small. And something that I have found that has helped me the most with it is talking about it, finding a therapist that I can really open up to and share what is going on with me inside my head and really just be able to get my feelings out in a safe environment. Personally, I think one of the reasons that I was so hesitant to start therapy for so many years is because I am not somebody that likes to do appointments in person. I think that nowadays, especially, so many different appointments are online and it just makes things more convenient, flexible, and just easy to schedule overall. So that being said, if you are similar to me and you want to start going to therapy or try to find a therapist that would be a perfect match for you, BetterHelp is a great option because it is entirely online. All you have to do is go online and fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can change your therapist at any time for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/insane today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/insane.
And it's like, am I doing the right thing? Like I'm so young. I was 14 and like I felt like I had my entire family's future in my hand and it felt so selfish. It really did. Like I said, my dad was in prison and I'm like, I might be taking away my brother's dad. Like how selfish am I? Like I'm so angry that I don't have a dad that I'm just going to, take their dad away from them just because he hurt my feelings. But I sat down with the counselor and I told her everything. And she looks at me and she goes, okay, do you want me to call CPS? And I was like, yeah, yes, I guess. Yeah, that would be terrific if you could do that. And she did. And I sat in that office for like hours. I didn't get to eat that day. Like there was just so much going on behind the scenes. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even care. I was just like twiddling my thumbs, nervous. I wasn't even on my phone texting my friends, letting them know what was going on. It was like everybody thought that I was just absent. Like nobody even knew where I was. And so I guess the school day had ended because I hear my name being announced on the intercom, Danielle Miller, come to the office. Danielle Miller, your parents are here. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they start calling my phone and texting my phone. And I'm realizing they realize I didn't get off the bus. And I'm freaking out. But luckily the counselor was still in the room with me and she's like, oh, it's fine. Just let it go to voicemail. Everybody who needs to know where you are knows where you are. You're safe. And so after what felt like forever, I was taken to this other bigger room with I think there was 4 police officers and just a bunch of people in suits. There was a lot of people in that room. It was so weird. They were sitting down at this big oval table and then they had me standing and they had a picture, a diagram of, a female diagram. And the police officer just sets it on the table and is like, can you point to where he touched you? And that's all he said. And I'm thinking whoa, I just said so much, when, where, what do you mean? How, what counts as touching? I don't know anything. I'm what, in my mind, I'm I feel the only thing that counts as touching, if he's asking me about touching, he's asking about rape, And so I just point to the vagina because that's the closest thing that had ever happened. And so they're okay, yeah, whatever. And I was put in an emergency placement foster home. And it wasn't until years later that I was able to get a copy of that police report, the initial one, that I realized that not only was I interviewed by that officer in that room, but my mother was as well. And I don't personally feel it was my testimony enough that they believed to take me away. I think it was actually my mom, because the deputy asks my mom, is there anything that Danielle might have said or done, anything that Danielle might be reporting? And she immediately goes off with the, no, she is always causing trouble. She is always causing drama. Nothing could have happened. The only thing I think could have happened is that about a year ago, my husband, Nathan, asked her to make porn with him, but it was literally just a test to make sure she wasn't like that. I myself was a victim and he wants to kill my abuser. So I know he wouldn't do that. And that was enough for the deputy to be yeah, file an emergency protective order. We're taking her away. And I was put in foster care that night. And that was the end of my experience of being tortured by them. And so I was able to finally put that behind me, but then I had an entire other hell to deal with because the justice system and how they help foster kids, or the lack thereof, they don't. When I was placed in care, I was placed in an emergency home, and I'm not even going to talk about the conditions of foster homes, right? Cause we know that that's been done to death. They were bad. Yeah. Not my foster homes that I was in, they weren't terrible, but for instance, my first home, we were literally locked in the basement. So literally an alarm on the door, couldn't get out of the basement. And that was one of the better ones. Right. And so that home, I stayed not for long. And then I ended up moving in with a kinship placement with my uncle. And again, I wasn't there for long because it just didn't work out. He was young and dumb, and his girlfriend did not like me. And it just was a hot mess express.
So quick question for you. Mm-hmm. So after, you told the counselor and the police came in, did you see your mom and your stepdad after that at all?
I didn't see them again until our first court hearing.
Which was how long in between?
I don't know. I really don't know. And that was also the last time, I didn't get to see my brothers. And that was something that I didn't even consider when I had reported it.
There was no communication, no seeing them. Okay.
Nothing. And the first time, I saw my brother was at court too. And it was, I think the hardest part was he had already changed so much. His voice was deeper. Mm-hmm. And I was like, where did my baby brother go? I was the last time I saw you, you sounded like Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. And now you're almost as tall as me, crying over getting me this Subway cookie, but you sound like, Dad. Who even are you?
Right.
And that was so hard. I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
At all. Now my mom, I saw her too, and they just were completely enraged with seeing me. I feel like I had our first, court dates when I was still in my first foster home. That makes the most sense. My emergency placement. But my mother was very resentful to me just because I told from the get-go. She kept my clothes from me for 2 weeks. I had to wear the same outfit to school. I didn't have a toothbrush. I didn't have anything. I didn't have shampoo. I had a bar of soap my foster mom gave me, and I had to take a bath. And that's all I had. And I had the same outfit to wear for 2 weeks to school. because she wouldn't give me my clothes. She wouldn't give me any of my personal belongings. She wouldn't give me anything. And on top of not giving me anything, she also told the state that I had like a bunch of restrictions and I wasn't allowed to like go over to certain friends' houses anymore because they were bad influences, which I mean, like, yeah, they were like these friends I was smoking weed with and stuff. Like a child starting at 11 should not be doing that. But like, you're also the one who let me keep going over there.
Yeah.
You're the one who let me keep having those friendships. So the fact that you're just now concerned about my safety tells me that
the control aspect.
It's the isolation. Yeah. Right. Like you just wanted me as alone and scared as possible.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like I can't understand that, you know, at all. And like, even if they claim like, you know, I'm so mentally ill and even though they admit what they did, they justify it by saying like, I needed it to happen to me. Right. Why are you so like angry at me? Like, why would you, if I'm really this messed up, like to this day that I still don't understand why that had to happen, like I would be heartbroken for my child. Like if my child is like this, like living in a delusion, I would be heartbroken, not actively like trying to hurt them and silence them and further abuse them while they're already accusing me of abusing them. Right. And my foster care experience was pretty short. I wasn't in for very long. I didn't stay with very many families. I like ended up in a kinship placement, which didn't work out. You know, it is what it is. But I ended up with a religious family. And it's actually really interesting how I ended up moving in with them. And it's like one of those things, like I look back and I'm like, I can't really explain. It's just kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe in God or anything now at all. Like I consider myself an agnostic atheist. And before I moved in with this Christian family, I was back at my original emergency placement. And this woman comes to me and is like, you're actually a really good kid, Danielle. And I was at this point, like in foster care, I really was able to like just kind of just be normal. Like I no longer wanted to hurt myself and abuse myself. I did always just want to focus on school, like just be a normal kid. So when I moved in with them, it was really, I was kind of like at a point where I was back to being like, fuck everything, because I was back at my emergency placement home, like the first one that I lived with. And she's like, you know, hey, you're actually a really good kid. Like you actually don't do anything like super bad. I think I might want to adopt you. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that's awesome. Cause like, I don't really mind being locked in the basement. Like I actually got used to it. I liked, it kind of felt like my own apartment for a minute, you know? I didn't mind. And I vibed, you know, I was cool with it. And then like a week after that, she pulls me back in and is like, I actually just I can't deal with teens like you anymore. And like, I didn't know what that meant. Like, cause like, she was just telling me like,
you were great.
Yeah. And so I'm like, nothing's changed though. So I remember I went back to my room and I got down on my hands and knees and I prayed. And I said, if there's really a God, I just want to be somewhere that I'm happy. And then, like, I don't want to know. I think it was like a week after that or so, like my caseworker was like, okay, we have potential foster parents for you, except it was like different. They wanted to like take me on a date, which was like totally different. I'm used to like throwing my clothes in a trash bag and just getting in the car and meeting the new strange parents, you know? Mm. And so they're like, no, like we want to take her out first before we take the placement. And so I'm like, whatever, like I'm over it. I'm over trying to prove myself. Like I just love me or don't, like I'm done with it. And so, I get ready and I'm wearing like as revealing of an outfit, like as I can, because I just don't care. Like I am my own individual and everyone wants to say I'm a whore and all I do is ask for this negative attention. So whatever, like then fine. Like I'm going to wear the things that make me feel cute then. Fine. Maybe I do like the negative attention.
Right.
Maybe I do. And I did because that's the only attention that I got. And they take me out to this pizza place and I'm just like arms crossed, like not interested at all. I think we were there for like maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Like I'm just like completely unresponsive. I don't even think I ate. And then it was the car ride home that they were just talking to each other. They weren't talking to me anymore. And I was just sitting in the back. And the mom like looks at the dad and says, what are you wearing to church tomorrow? And I like spoke up from the back seat and I'm like, you guys go to church? And they looked at each other and they're like, yeah. And I was like, I always have wanted to go to church. And that was that. They dropped me off at my emergency placement home. And then when my caseworker picked me up, like whenever it was time for me to move, I can't remember how long it had been, packed up my trash bags, you know, and I'm going to my next home and she drops me off. The people open the door and it's them. And I was like really shocked because I didn't think that our dinner went good at all.
Right. Like you didn't try to make a good impression.
Not at all. I completely made an ass of myself, completely on purpose. Cause I think I just didn't really want to go. I kind of wanted to make it hard on them to move me again. You know, like if you're just going to keep making my life hard and like making me switch schools every couple months and I can't even keep up with friends anymore, then I'm going to make your life hard. Since I'm such a difficult child, then I'll just play the part of a difficult child. And they took me. And I still don't know if that was like the best thing that ever happened for me or was just, a necessary evil. Because when I moved in with them, the structure was exactly what I needed. Because I had come from being that child that started smoking weed at 11, sexting with grown men, starting at 12, dangerous on chat rooms. Like I was a daredevil. I was seeking for any sort of control in my life. And now that I was in this environment with this like really strict structure, it felt very safe for me. Everything was predictable because in the past it was kind of dependent on my mom's mood. Like if the dishes, it didn't matter if the dishes really were not clean or not. Like I might have not scrubbed a bowl very good, but if mom was in a good mood, then that's not a big deal. But if I left even one little soap bubble on a plate and she's in a bad mood, well, now I have to take out every single dish and rewash all of them. I'm grounded. It's the end of the world. But in this Christian foster home, it was very cut and dry. What the Bible says, do it. It's that simple. And what God says to do it. Everything will be okay. And I fully believed this. And it did help me a lot. Like me aligning myself so strictly to the things that the Bible said did keep me away from a lot of the paths that I was going down, which could have ended in homelessness, teen pregnancy, drug addictions. I mean, like, I don't even know. Like, I was really like losing it. And, worst of all, like killing myself. The first time I tried to take my life was when I was 10. And so like, this was not something that I was not familiar with. And, I was just finally at a place where if I didn't know what's right or wrong, I finally had a place to go. And these people couldn't hit me because that's against the rules. So I knew that I would never be physically touched. And I also had like my entire kind of like apartment upstairs in the attic. Like it was really nice. Like the entire structure, everything was so nice. They got me into sports. I had never played sports in my life. And they got me into track, which is something that I'd always wanted to do. I loved running and I ended up being pretty good at it. They got me into theater, which is something that I had not really ever had a chance to know if I was interested in. All I was like the curtain opener and closer, but like I got to be there and I got to witness like the stage movements and things like that. Like I was experiencing life. I was like actually just like living, like I felt like a normal kid. Like it wasn't like I was like going through these like mature adult things and like, oh, I'm living the fast life at 12. I'm so cool. I was like, yeah, I'm 16 and I'm helping open the curtain for my school play. What do you want from me? Mm-hmm. And it was like such a shift and I loved it. It felt so safe and so secure. And I felt so normal. I didn't feel like this like walking trauma dumpster that everybody could like tell was on fire. And then the school year came to an end and it was like coming up on the next school year. And I was realizing like my parents were kind of wanting me back. And I was like really having a hard time with that because like I said, like I was really involved in the religion. I took it really seriously. And so I did seriously believe that not that it was my job to get my parents saved, not that it was my job to get them to heaven. But as my foster mother told me, I might be the only Bible they ever see. So it was my job to be like Jesus. And what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus wouldn't hang their mistakes over their head. Danielle, you are no different than a pedophile. Your sins are the same as your stepdad's. And if God could forgive you, then how can you not forgive your stepdad? That made sense to me. Pretty cut and dry, pretty black and white. And black and white was very safe for me. So I forgave him. I thought I did. I didn't really. I was performing, I just wanted the people that I loved to go to heaven with me. I just wanted, because whenever you're in heaven, you're perfect. You're not a sinner, right? So I would finally get my daddy back. It would be my hero of a daddy again. And it would be my mom dancing with me in heaven to Shania Twain again. And that was my mission. That was more important than anything else. That was more important than my own justice. So I decided to drop the charges and just go ahead and just live with them full time, my Christian foster parents. I felt like that was the safest thing that I could do. That was the best option that I had to make sure that everybody that I loved was taken care of after I had done something so selfish. And my foster parents supported me. They supported me in that. Actually encouraged it. My entire church did too. They said that I was such a great example of forgiveness and used me as an example. Like if she can forgive her stepdad for all of these things and they're still not even Christians and it doesn't bother her, she's still trying, then why can't you? I was the example. And I really just fed into it, and I would put myself around them. I would go see them. I would act like nothing happened.
So that was allowed? Like you were allowed to see your parents, but still full-time live with the foster family? Yeah,
and that's the part that has always been so, like, when I look back, I'm like, why was this allowed?
It's confusing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, I couldn't go back home because clearly that's not safe for me, but you're also not going to do anything about this unsafe person.
Yeah.
And I'm also now allowed to see them. Mm-hmm. And it was still all somehow my fault for being the one to go around them and stuff, when my intentions the whole time was just, I just wanted my family back. Mm-hmm. I just wanted my family back, and I just wanted everybody to be okay. And I just wanted to make sure that we could all be okay. And, so I would see them like on weekends. I would mainly just visit my mom and my little brother. I wouldn't see my stepdad, really. I feel like I didn't actually see him until after guardianship with my Christian foster parents was granted, because he didn't come. Like, now that I'm realizing, he didn't come to visit. So like I would have visitation with like my mom and my little brother, but he wouldn't come. And I don't know if maybe he was court ordered not to, but considering reunification at that time was the goal, that doesn't make sense why the court would say that he couldn't come when I would be moving in with him. And I can't remember exactly why I decided. Yes, I actually do remember why. I was in a Christian camp after my, like, I think it was my junior year, or no, my sophomore year had ended, and I'm still living with this Christian family. And I decided to go to their Christian camp at their church. Fun, whatever. I'd never been to camp before. And at camp, I heard this like whole message on, well, if you feel like God is not answering like a specific question you have. And I had a specific question, like, do I go home or do I stay with these people? Like, I'm still not completely sure like what decision I make. Cause like I felt very strongly and safe with these Christian foster parents, but I also like, I felt bad. Yeah. For wanting that. So I felt like, I always said, like, I felt like I had like these two doors, and it's like staying with these Christian foster parents was a completely closed door. I had no idea what was behind it, but going back home was like an open door, and like, I knew what was behind it. And so this felt like the safer option. Like, I knew what to predict. I knew that possibly my stepdad might try to sell me. I knew that he might groom me, but like, I could at least, like, it was more comfortable than, I don't know what this life is going to hold at all. And I do know that I love these people, and that I know what I can tolerate. I know what I can allow myself to go through.
And how long were you in foster care at this point?
I think a year at this point. And so then after that church camp is when I heard this like message on surrendering and stuff. And I realized like the Bible, like this preacher was all like, oh, like you got to surrender your life if you want God to answer your questions and stuff. So I did. I was like, okay, God, like everything is all yours. And that night I took out my lip ring. I took out my septum ring. I was like, I'm never dyeing my hair again. I'm not cutting my hair again. I'm not wearing pants anymore. I took it like very, very, very literally and so seriously, because I was like, I have to make sure I'm doing the right thing by everybody. I cannot be making this decision on my own. Like, this is a huge decision. And I look back and I'm like, why was my caseworker not making that decision with me? Where was my caseworker? Where was my guardian ad litem? Where was my attorney? Like, where were my advocates? Why was I going through all of this on my own and having to make such a huge decision
at such a young age?
At such a completely alone. And like that's a decision that completely changes your life.
Yep.
And same with like the dropping the charges. That should have never even been my decision either. I should not have been able to say, oh, I don't want to go through with it. So they get guardianship of me, I think like later that summer. I'm not really sure, like on the timelines. But when they get guardianship of me, everything changed. So like maybe it was like months after that camp or whatever, but like things were pretty boring living with them until they got guardianship of me. Like it was all same old, same old. I did end up going to like a Christian school. They put me into their private Christian school, which was like super, super cool. I got a much better education than I was.
So you decided to stay with them?
Yes, okay. I did. Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that. So yes, they did get guardianship of me. My parents or my mom did sign over for that. She wasn't going to do adoption or anything because that meant that if I was like in a car accident and I was like on my deathbed, then she wouldn't be able to come see me.
Okay.
So she wanted guardianship because she wanted to be able to still like see me like in like big things like that, which looking back, I'm still like, you're like actually so crazy. What? You only care about seeing me if I'm on my deathbed? Like, come on. Like, you don't get that right. But that never happened, thankfully. So they get guardianship of me. And it was like something just completely switched. Like they were like completely different people. And like that day was like the best day of my life. Like I remember being so excited. And when we came home, like we threw like a little party. I love carrot cake. The mom like got me a carrot cake and stuff. Like it was a huge, they made it a big deal. They made it very, very special. But it was like things just started changing really, really quickly. And I couldn't understand, and I still don't understand, like why. I have my opinions and my theories. I think they got scared of me. I think they got scared of like how much of a perfect like Christian foster kid I was, and they couldn't believe it. So I feel like in my opinion, sabotaged our entire relationship. I genuinely was not doing anything wrong. Like not that making mistakes as a teenager makes you a bad kid. Like, you know, they want us to believe. I was literally going to church. Like I was such a stick in the mud Christian that literally one of my punishments that my foster mother used on me was not letting me go do church service on a Saturday. Because like that was fun to me. So I wasn't allowed to go do it. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But all of a sudden, specifically the dad started getting weird as hell, creepy, just so creepy. I was interested in this boy and we had been talking at church and it was nothing close to sexting or like anything. It literally the most Christian vanilla kind of conversations, just genuinely interested in each other. And this dad, he pulls me aside and says that the reason he can't let me date him is because he's a jealous dad, like a God is a jealous God. And I was like, okay. I don't really know what that means, but I just went with it because like, what do I know? At this point in my life, like I had no self-esteem, and it's really, I feel a lot of shame when I look back on this time of my life, because I always looked at myself as like such a leader because everybody liked my story, right? Like I had this horrible childhood and then God saved me and I forgave my parents. And now look at me serving the Lord and not complaining while doing it. I had a great story, but I was far from a leader. I was literally looking toward everybody else for what is right and what is wrong because I had just been so traumatized that I didn't know what's right and what's wrong. And that's, I feel like, why the Bible felt so safe for me because it was just so cut and dry, so clear cut. He started taking things like further, like he would go onto my phone, and there was already a rule that I couldn't have my phone like in my room past 10 o'clock at night. And that's because like I was sexting and stuff when I lived with my uncle. And that was like totally fine. Like I understood that completely. Like, okay. But he started like locking down apps on my phone and like locking me out of certain things like past certain times. For instance, my period tracking app, he locked me out of it. And when I confronted him on it, he said that I was trying to get pregnant because there was no reason I needed to know when my fertile window was. Like as if that's not just like a normal part of a period, right? So he locked me out of that. I ended up getting like a yeast infection or some sort of infection in my vagina from something. I don't know. You know, sports. I was in volleyball. I was doing a lot. It doesn't matter. Women get yeast infections. So I ended up going to the gynecologist, and my foster mom wanted to be the one to go with me. And I was like not comfortable with this because this was, you know, post guardianship and things were just a little bit weird. Like I felt very like I felt like a fish in a glass bowl. And like, I didn't know what I was doing so wrong. But like everybody was just like watching my every move. And so I'm like, no, like, I think I would rather like my friend come with me. And so I asked if my friend could come with me, and she's like, nope, absolutely not. Either I go with you or you can go by yourself. And the reason I was going is like for this infection. Like I was a little bit nervous because like I don't think I had like gone, to a gynecologist since I was 15. And when I was 15, it was with my uncle. So that was so not fun. So I was like, okay, lady, I'm just going to go by myself then. But I didn't. I had my friend meet me there, and she went with me. And somehow my foster mom found out. And it was this huge like argument. And then the dad comes out and is like, what? Did you need like those antibacterial medications because something happened at your parents' house this weekend? Because like this was during the time when I would still go see my brother and stuff. And I was like, what did you just say to me? Like, no, like I'm just like a girl with a vagina.
Yeah.
And sometimes things happen. Like this is absolutely wild and it's so inappropriate. They just kept triggering me. Like they would not give me the benefit of the doubt. They would not give me space.
And they weren't like this at all in the beginning.
No.
It just started.
Yeah. Like I adored them. Like they were strict. Yeah. Like they're strict Christians.
Right.
It was definitely a culture shock. It was an adjustment.
Yeah.
But it was nothing that I was unwilling to do. I was completely fine with it. I was not feeling rebellious at all. In fact, like I really, really heavily fucked with a religion.
Right.
At the time, like I really heavily fucked with it.
Church on Saturdays.
Exactly. I was into it. And so that's why I say, I think that they got scared because they're like looking for something, right? I think that's why I started like locking down my phone so much. Cause it's like, if I lock down things, then surely something's going to come up where she's like, oh, I need this. But like, I think that they were really just starting to give up because I'm like, okay, like if you're just going to take away all my stuff, okay, just take it. Like I'm still just going to go to church. Cool.
Right.
Like, I'm just going to pray about this now. And I think it was really frustrating them. I think that they thought that I was like really good at hiding something because he was convinced that I was trying to get pregnant. I don't know why.
Bizarre.
It's super bizarre. Convinced that I was trying to get pregnant. And I'm like, bro, I don't know where this is coming from. So I ended up running away from their home. Again, I had enough. And the event that led up to this it was senior night. It was volleyball. It was my senior. It was like our like last homecoming games, like the senior night or whatever, where you as a senior, your parents like meet you on the court and they give you like the flowers or whatever, and then you whatever. And I was really, having a hard time with this because I don't have parents. And I asked my foster mom if she'd be there. And she said that she couldn't because she had like other things going on or whatever. And she knew about the dates. Like she, at the beginning of the season, give me 14 copies of your schedule sort of person. She knew about this. Plus I asked her if she'd be there for me. And she said she couldn't. She had something to do for like work or something. At the time, I was really, really close with my youth pastor and his wife. So I was like, hey, my foster parents aren't going to step in as my parents. Like, can you guys do this for me? And they're like, yeah, of course we can. And so all they did is they step out on the court, meet me halfway. They gave me flowers, took a picture with me. That was it. Literally just so I didn't have to be out there alone with no flowers. And I think it was like the next day at school. At this point, I had a car, but it was taken away from me. I was not allowed to drive it because I don't know why. Like I said, they were just kind of taking everything away from me. And I was just rolling with the punches. And so after school to this day, I didn't have to go to work. So I didn't drive myself to school. That was the only time that I could drive myself to school is if I worked after school. And so I didn't have work this day. And my foster dad's dad, so my foster grandpa, he was driving me home from school. And I never really talked to this old man in the car. Like he's so old, like can't barely talk to him, you know? And so like, I'm just like staring out the window and all of a sudden he starts talking and I'm like, oh my God, like he's alive.
Right.
And he's saying the most vile things. Like it's foster kids like you are the reason they don't want to be foster parents anymore. I don't understand how you're so ungrateful. How could you hurt them like this? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
What did I do now? Like, come on, what did I do now? And he's like, you really had the youth pastor and his wife meet you out on the court instead of them? And I'm like, they knew about it. Like I asked them to be there. And he basically implies that just because they couldn't be there, I should have just walked out alone because it made them look bad. And I'm like, well, what about how I felt? Like, what about me looking bad out there with no parents at all? Like that was really hurtful. And he just keeps digging into me saying that like, it's literally foster kids like me are the reason they don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, I could be so much worse. Like legitimately, I lived with girls in the same house that were so much worse, like so much worse. And I didn't judge them. Like, do your thing, dude. I'm just doing my thing. But like, I was so confused about why I was being targeted. Like, not that like I would have wanted any of my foster sisters to be targeted, but like, I was so confused, like, why me? Like, why all of this scrutiny on me? I just don't understand because I'm not doing anything wrong. So I looked at him when we finally got back to the house and I was like, don't worry about it. You'll never have to drive me home from school again. And I slammed the door shut and I walked inside. And we had a new girl living with us. I think her name was Chelsea. I don't know. I can't even remember what she looked like. I think I was only living with her for like a week before I ran away. And she was like cleaning up a mess that the dogs had made. And she had never seen me so angry. I was like, just go upstairs. I'm going to finish cleaning it up. And I didn't finish cleaning it up, but I called my foster mom and I was like, just so you know, like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm leaving tonight. I can't do this anymore. This feels like so unfair. And the only thing she said back was, that's okay. Just leave your phone on the table. And I was like, wow, like, okay, cool. And so I'm now upstairs in my room, and I'm, 17 at this point. I don't have a caseworker anymore. They have guardianship of me. I have nowhere to go. And I'm like, I can't stay here though. So I started calling like as many friends as I could think of. And most of them were like, I'd love to, but I can't. My parents won't let me, this or that. We're all minors. And so I was finally like actually just stuck with facing the fact that I was probably going to have to like live on the street, which was not a huge deal to me because I had a plan. I lived pretty close to a public school, and that public school had like an open area like underneath of their outside bleachers that was like pretty blocked off from the wind because it had kind of like a mountain like thing behind it. And I was just going to camp out there and then walk to school, eat my food, camp out there. That's what I was going to do. And I could shower at school, do all those things that I needed to at school. And I ran out of people to call. So I was realizing that this is probably, what I would have to do. And I was like, I'll just call this one last person. Her name was Riley. And I was kind of friends with her in school. We weren't like super close at all. She was kind of like more popular, more out there. And I was just very reserved, very a follower. Like I wanted to see, like I followed whoever, I guess like was like doing the best, right? Because like that was safe. So whatever like the teachers were cool with Riley doing, I would do, like I followed Riley very closely. Like she was very safe to follow her. So I had remembered that her parents had met me twice, and I guess they knew that I was a foster kid or something. And I remember her dad had like talked to me and was like, hey, like if you ever need anything, just let us know. If you ever need anything, just let us know. And I was always like, yeah, okay, And now I needed something, and I was not close with Riley. We were like, pass by each other. We could sit at the same lunch table, but like not really knowing each other. And I called her and I was like, dude, I can need a place to stay. I don't know how long it'll be. I don't know if it'll just be a day. I don't know. I'll figure it out, but like I need a place to stay tonight. And she was like, okay, like I'll talk to my mom and I'll let you know what she says. And I'm just sitting there like rocking back and forth. I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but I also really don't want to stay here either. And I get a text from Riley's mom, Paige, and she's like, I'll be off work at 6 and I'll be there to pick you up at 6 o'clock. And I was like, oh, thank God. And Lisa came home, my foster mom. She came home before 6 o'clock, and I had to have this like it was like a stand down. She came upstairs and she rounded off the corner because we lived in an attic. So there was really no like walls. It was kind of just like open beds, and we had dressers with mirrors that we could kind of make into walls, like makeshift walls. So she like rounds my like wall, and I knew she was coming because I could see through it. And she just stands like at the corner of this dresser and is like eating me like through my soul. Like it's the strangest stare I've ever seen. Like it was so weird. And she says, you got all your stuff packed? And I'm like, mm-hmm. And she's like, that phone better be downstairs by the time you're gone. And then she took her they had 2 toddler foster kids as well that they had also had guardianship over. She takes them and she leaves. And it was just me there again. And I went downstairs, put my phone on the counter, and eventually Paige came. And we just packed up all of my garbage bags of stuff back into her car. And we didn't go straight back to their house. I'd never even seen their house. I didn't know where they lived. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I just needed a place to stay. And I was terrified. But at this point, like I was so used to living with strangers that I knew the best thing to do is to just shut up and just observe and just do what they do. That's the safest thing to do. And so that's what I did. I just went with their flow of things, and I didn't complain. I didn't I just kind of sat quietly in the background trying to be as thankful as I could because I didn't want to be looked at as like ungrateful, and then turned away. I was like really scared over how I guess interacted with these families because I didn't know if something was like too like asking too much or like maybe being bratty. I don't know. But this night they had cheer practice for Riley and Reese. They were both cheerleaders, competitive cheerleaders, excellent cheerleaders. And they took me to the cheer practice. They took me like out to eat afterwards. Like they just took me on their normal routine, like as if like it was no big deal that I was with them at all. And to me, like that was so weird because I was just so used to, as a foster kid, whenever you get placed in a new home, it's like everything's all about you and it's very overwhelming. It's super uncomfortable. So like this was like so different. It was not all about me. I was just along. And so it felt a lot more normal. Like I kind of just felt like I was hanging out with my friend, not going through another foster placement. And since I was 17, nothing could be done. Like the police couldn't make me go back. I was just considered a runaway. And I moved in with Paige, Riley, and Derek and Reese that night. And on our like way there from cheer practice to where they lived, which was about like a 45-minute drive, they had taken the time. By they, I mean like Derek, the dad, he had completely cleared out their guest bedroom and went up in their attic, took down like an old bed frame that they had, mattresses. Like they gave me in just a couple hours my own room. And that's where I lived until like I ended up going to college and stuff. And we're not super close anymore. It's really sad and unfortunate. It's just a lot of like miscommunication and immaturity and unraveling and just, it's just like kind of just sad in general, like why we're not very close anymore. But we are working on it, which is something like.
So how long did you live there with them?
Only for like a year, I would want to say. Okay. Like I lived like with them in the house for like a year.
And but for the most part, that was fine. Would you say that was?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was so great. I loved living. There was definitely like struggles, like looking back and like we can all agree. Like I've been having conversations with Riley. It's like we had a falling out and stuff. Like I said, like just a lot of things could have gone better.
I mean, that's also a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that was so like amazing and nice of them to take you in, but it's also like, it's a lot for you. It's a lot for them. It's like, you know what I mean?
I turned their whole world upside down, you know? And it's like, I don't blame myself because I was a kid. I needed a place to stay. But that's why I say the whole situation is so sad because it was like, I was a kid, but I was also 17. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of an adult. Like what really could Paige and Derek, like if they felt like there was like some parenting things that they needed to do, they didn't feel safe enough or comfortable enough to parent me in those ways because I could just leave.
Right. It's like a very weird situation.
Exactly. They would have rather me know that I'm safe there and be able to monitor me, you know, whatever. And I wasn't doing anything dangerous at all. But I was in a relationship with a man, like a full grown man. And this is like one of those areas where like I look back and I'm like, it's hard for me to like, I guess, hold them accountable for not protecting me. But also, you know, like we talked about, like I was 17. When I first started like going to church there, this man started going to church there too. And he was like about 10 years older than me. And I found out pretty quickly that he was the son of somebody who was pretty high in the church, whatever. And he was going through a divorce. And that's why he was back in town. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I don't care. I'm one track mind, right? And he immediately starts grooming me. He got my phone number, a high schooler's, out of his friend's phone, or like his friend's son's phone, which is even weirder. And he starts texting me about like his divorce and stuff. And at first I was like, oh, like, you know, like he just wants to be friends, you know, like this is just like Christian friends. Like he's a good Christian guy. He graduated with a youth pastor's degree. Like he's a good Christian guy. Like this is not going any further than this. He's going through a divorce. He had a daughter. Everybody in the church knew what was going on. And everybody in the church blamed me for it and said that I was a homewrecker and that I needed to stop. But he was telling me like that everything was fine, like that I was the love of his life and that he knew that God had us for each other and that he was going to be able to marry me as soon as I graduated and I would finally have my family. And that was a delusion. Oh, that was some delusion. But no adult in my life, like I didn't have a single person in my life except for one girl in school who I was not very good friends with. And this is how like I look back and I'm like, she hated me, but she was looking out for me because she pulled me aside and she's like, Danielle, like this is not normal. Like I don't think that you should be doing this. And I'm like, dude, Everybody else is saying it's fine. If anything, everybody's saying that I'm the problem. So I don't really see what the problem is. But like even the pastor, like the lead pastor had pulled me aside into his office and was like, you're being a homewrecker. This is not okay behavior. And I look back and I'm like, why did nobody pull the 27, 28-year-old into the office and talk about how it's wrong to be targeting a foster kid that doesn't even really have a stable home at all. I didn't even know I didn't know anything. I was so delusional, just so quick to be married. I want a family, married. I want a family. I want my own family. I want my own family. I had not started healing from anything. And at the same time, like Riley's parents knew about this relationship, but they didn't necessarily discourage it. And they didn't stop it. They did like try to do as much as they could. Like they wouldn't let me go hang out with him, but it was like one of those examples where it was like really tricky for them because at the same time, they would let Riley go hang out with her boyfriend. So I was like, I'm older than Riley, first of all. My boyfriend's even older. Like we're both an older couple.
In the church.
In the church, yes. Yeah. Very, very like well in the church, right? Like super Christians. Riley's none of these things. So why is she able to go and I can't? Like that's where I was at. And now looking back, I understand that was their way of trying to protect me as much as they could without making me feel like maybe I had to like panic and, well, if you're going to take away all of my control, then I'm just going to go move in with him or I'm just going to go whatever. But it's like things like that I look back and I'm like, it just sucks because it's like where we very first started having a falling out, me and the Huxes, that's their last name. And they don't mind me talking about them. They're great. We had a falling out when I was going down to Pensacola Christian College. That's where we started falling out, which is a great segue into like the whole next part of it. But they were there to drop me off for school. And in my mind, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like these people literally don't give a shit about PCC, but they care about me. Like they're here for me. They're here to see me go like take my tests and see what classes I get in. I never had somebody like that. I'd never had in my life somebody that's just like, oh, you're interested in this. And like, I'm excited for you. Like it was always like, oh, you're doing that. Cool. And so I was like, wow, like they want to come see my college campus. Like they're interested in me. And that was the case up until like, I think it was like the last day. Riley, bless her heart, was just getting burnt out on the book sales, and she wanted to go to the beach. The school was about 20 minutes from the beach. So she wanted to go to the beach and Paige and Reese are like, yeah, like there's no big deal. Like, let's go to the beach. And in my mind, I'm like, what? You don't want to come with me? I was heartbroken. And I look back and I'm like, how silly. But like at the same time, like it was my unspoken expectations that weren't met. And I also, not at any fault of their own, I didn't feel safe enough to be able to say, hey, actually, I kind of thought that this week was going to be all about me because I was scared of that would sound entitled, that they would get angry. So instead, I regrettably kept it all in and I let it bubble up. And we ended up having the biggest like screaming match, all 5 of us in the car, over the damn beach. And looking back, like that's where things started to crumble. Because I just did not have the healing in me, the confidence in me yet to be able to speak my truth and say, hey, this is how I feel without being scared about how other people might react, even them. And that wasn't fair to them. And that was the foundation of what kind of led to our relationship falling apart. And they still supported me through college. They actually paid for my first semester of college. They bought me a car after like I lost my other one to that one family. They bought me my own car, like out of pocket, my name on the title. It's mine. They supported me through college. Like anytime I needed money, they got me like in a program at college that I would not have to pay anything back. That after I was done working, like I would have to work an extra year. Like, so I would go to college for 5 years instead of 4. But after I was done, I'm set up, like I'm good. They didn't have to do any of that. Yeah. And they busted their ass doing all of that, even through all of like my confusing behavior. Cause like a lot of my behavior toward them stemmed from them not being like as Christian as me, because I was still really holding on to that. I was still really believing like, if you cuss, like one cuss word, like, and you're separated from God, like one drink, you know, like I was so very much so brainwashed in this, like this was the truth and the ultimate truth. And you are actually might be dangerous to me, you know, like if you don't operate with that, like I would be scared that maybe listening to a cuss word would like send me down this spiral path to hell. So I was like protecting myself. That's what I told myself. And so I started distancing myself from them, which was easy, you know, because I'm going to college in Florida and they were in Missouri. But I wouldn't talk to them as much. And I had a friend that I was starting to talk to more that I had met at my Christian school. I'll call her Rose.
I like that.
So Rose and I were really, really good friends in high school. I clung to her basically as soon as I went to that Christian school. She kind of like took me under her wing and like I followed her. Like she was my lead and I followed like everything that Rose and Riley said, like that's truth, right? I followed and I wanted so bad to believe that I was leading and I was not. I was completely following. Rose and Riley had like a falling out and I had like picked back up with Rose because Rose is a little bit more of like a strict Christian, you know, like me. She gets it, you know, Riley doesn't get it. The Huxes don't get it. But she got it. And really looking back, I understand it was just, she struggles with just gossip, right? Like the circles, I'm going to gossip about you. And then when you make me bad, then I'm going to gossip about you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I got roped right into that. And I started gossiping about Riley. I started gossiping about the Huxes. And I started saying really shitty things about them, like really shitty things. I can't even think about like anything in particular, just like things about like how I felt like maybe I was just a charity case for them, that they never even actually loved me. You don't pay for somebody's entire semester of college and buy them a car if you don't actually like love them. And I put their name through the mud. And even through all of it, they never blamed me. They were always upset and stuff, but they never like were angry at me. They always just gave me the space that I needed until I was like ready to talk about it and stuff again. And so eventually me and Rose have a falling out, right? As does. And then I realized the cycle, right? We've not got out of high school. So I had to cut off my relationship with Rose and I have indefinitely for now. But when I met my husband, he loved the Huxes. It was a completely different culture than where he had grown up. He grew up a pastor's son. So he grew up very like in the church, independent fundamental Baptist. And that's how he was raised. That born from the ground up, wearing pink is wrong if you're a guy. Like it's so crazy. Mm-hmm. And we met at PCC. And we shared the same values and stuff. And when I brought him back home to Missouri to meet the Huxes, like he fell in love with them. He loved like how wild and crazy they were and just like how unapologetically themselves they were. Like as a woman, I look up to Riley. She is incredible. And I hope that my daughters are like as self-confident, like as Riley and Reese were their whole life. Like I hope that I can do as good of a job that Paige did with those girls. But he loved them. And it was so confusing for me because I'm like, stop, like you can't love these sinners. Like you can love the sinners, but like stop liking what they do. Cause like, isn't this wrong? And like, there was like my follower mindset is like, I was like searching for the truth somewhere instead of just asking myself, like, what do I actually think is right and wrong? What do I think? Mm-hmm. It was me constantly, okay, what is the right thing? And so Aiden and I actually ended up getting married after only knowing each other for a year. And that's because we had sex and we got married because we had sex. And looking back, that was like one of our biggest regrets. But we were once again just following, trying to do what the right thing was. It's actually a very funny story. We were at college at Pensacola Christian College. Okay. And it was a Sunday after church and we were both just sitting there in the commons studying. And I looked at him and he was a virgin. Okay. And I was like, do you want to just go have sex? And he's like, sure, why not? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And now I don't know if you know much about PCC. When you're going to college at PCC, you can't be alone with the opposite sex. There are separate dorms for girls and guys on separate sides of the campus. You can't ride in the same elevators together. You can't walk up the same staircases together. You can't touch each other in any way, shape, or form at all. Like it is very strict. So Yeah, I was like, yeah, let's go. And we walked down to my car, which I had moved to the brother-sister parking lot because we also had different parking lots for our cars. And I moved it there, and I told the school that I was moving it there so that my boyfriend could borrow my car. So like, I've never been a liar. Like I'm going to be honest, you know, I'm doing some bad things. And we had sex in the backseat of my car. And the funniest part of it is one of my friends actually ended up walking by the back window of my car and stopped and looked in the back window of my car and fixed his hair. But because the windows were tinted, he did not see us, but we were frozen. Could not believe that was like legit someone like we know, like what are the odds? And I used to not be able to say this story like in a lighthearted way because I carried so much shame from my religious trauma with it. But now I look back and I'm like, that's such a funny way to like have sex for the first time, right? But after that, we felt so much shame. And we felt like we had ruined our lives, which is so ridiculous. Like that is so beyond ridiculous. Sex does not mean that your life's ruined at all, especially if you enjoyed it with somebody that you really like. Like, what? That's not ruining. We called his dad. We decided that would be the best thing because his dad's a preacher. Who's going to know best about what to do than a preacher, right? And we called Paige, my family. And my family said that it's not a big deal. If you guys feel like you shouldn't have done it, don't do it again and move on. Just keep going to school. Like, it's not a big deal. You didn't ruin your life. You had sex. Congratulations. Like, I don't know what to tell you. His dad, our life was ruined. He said that the best thing to do would to be go ahead and come on home and get married. Those were his words. And my poor husband, he did not want to. Like, it's not that we didn't want to get married, but we wanted to finish school. Like, we wanted to finish college. Like, we were having a good time in college. Like, maybe not like at that college, like maybe looking back, like we would have, done better somewhere else, but we didn't want to quit school. Like, this is like, look at how much the Huxes invested into me to go. And I was the first person in my family to go, let alone to an out of state college, like in Florida. Like, that to me was so cool.
Yeah.
And, we just stared at each other, and his dad keeps talking. He's like, yeah, I just feel like, in order to, minimize the risk again, because the Bible says it's better for a man to be buried or to be married than to burn with lust or something like that. And I was like, yeah, they're right. They're right. And then it dawned on me. I was like filled with this rush of like good emotions because I was like, I'm getting my family. And it had nothing to do with him. And looking back, like, that's like the worst part is our marriage had nothing to do with our love for each other.
Right.
Had everything to do with doing things the right way. And then I covered up those realities by being overwhelmed with the realization that I was finally going to get to start a family. And we got married 2 months later. We drove up the next day. We dropped out of college the next day. Both of us went to our deans and we dropped out that very same day, like the next day. And then we packed up my car and we both drove to Virginia, which is crazy that was okay for us to drive, 14 hours alone in a car together. But God forbid we stay at our Christian college, we drive 14 hours to Virginia. We get here and we had to hide. Literally, we had to hide for about 2 weeks. I want to say it was like a week or two because we couldn't be seen by the church. His dad was the pastor. It would make him look bad. And then the church would start asking questions like, why are we back?
And you only went to Virginia because that's where his family lived?
Yes. Okay. So because I didn't I guess I could have gone back with the Huxes, but I felt like, I didn't have anything. Exactly. Yeah. I didn't have anything left there. There was nothing to go back to anyway. So I was fine with just, forget it. I'll live in Virginia now, I guess. I've lived in so many places anyway. Guess Virginia is next on the list. We finally did get to come out of hiding. And when we did, we had to get up in front of the church and apologize. We had to tell the church what we did and ask for forgiveness, basically, before we could be welcomed back into the church. And thankfully, I didn't have to speak. I just stood at the front with my husband's mom, and my husband got up there and he had to publicly humiliate himself in front of his entire church. Why? Because he interned the summer before. So, yeah. After he was done giving his speech, everybody from the church started coming up to give us hugs and welcome us back into the congregation. And after this, like nobody made an effort to get to know me. Like I didn't know his church very well. Like I had visited his hometown one time before, and that was it. I didn't know anybody at their church. And now all of a sudden I'm a Tilly, right? Like I'm in the family. I am part of the pastor's family, and we weren't even married yet. And I already had like this label on me and this pressure to operate a certain way. And it wasn't scary for me because I didn't know who I was. Like I was so used to just taking on each new family's identity. That's just what I did. And it got me this far in life. So I kept doing it, and I adapted to exactly like what they believed in and stuff. And then it just started not working anymore. He started working not only for the church as a children's pastor, but also for a family in the church doing construction. And long story short, this family was just not, they were just not holding up their end of the deal, not giving him the promotions that he was promised and things like this. And we were really struggling financially, like dirt poor. We had nothing. We had to sell our couch. We had to sell our table. Literally, we didn't have a car. We had nothing just to be able to eat, to afford diapers, because these people, like him taking the paid cut from working full time with these people to going part time so he could do what God told him to do and work for the church, with his dad. It was a huge pay cut. And our Christian community members were not helping to fill in that gap. And they were instead just literally watching us drown in debt. And then after I had our third baby, about like a year ago, like I mentioned, she had a condition called Brew 7 days after she was born. She was born completely healthy, full term, great pregnancy, great delivery, like, as good as like the HG can get. But like my deliveries always made the pregnancies worth it a little bit because I always have very magical births. And it was great. It was everything that I wanted it to be. Perfect. We went home the next day. I have very easy births. And, come 7 days, we decided to take our older two out. Our library had like a goat outside and a chicken outside. So we're like, we've been locked up in this house for a week. Let's take the kids to go see this goat and this chicken. So put the baby in, whatever. We get there. It's like really packed. There's not even a point. Like there's so many people for this damn goat and chicken. And we had goats at our house, right? Like at this time we had goats. So I was like, yeah, we're not getting out. We're just going home. So then we decided to just drive back home. And, as we're driving back home, we are passing a playground, like at a school that we're pretty close to. And I felt bad that we had like got all the kids ready and, we hadn't done anything fun, And so I'm like, let's just stop at this playground and like let them play. Cause I think it was like a Saturday or Sunday. Nobody was in school. So it was just them at the playground. And I noticed that our baby was not breathing right. And I thought maybe she's just hot. So I decided to take her onesie off and breastfeed her. And she just still was not breathing right. And at this point, I was like down under like a pavilion thing. And I'm like, okay, like maybe she really is just hot. It was like 80 degrees outside. So I'm like, I'm going to take her back to the car to cool down. And I do. And by the time I get back to the car, she is completely blue and she's not breathing. She's like dead. And I thankfully knew how to do infant CPR. When I was at PCC, my job was working in the daycare. So I was certified in these things. I thank God knew what to do. So I was able to like keep her heart beating, like stimulate her as much as I could till the ambulance got there, and then they took over, but we didn't know what was happening. We had no clue. She was completely healthy, completely normal that morning. And then she was dead, literally in my arms. I'd never seen anything like SIDS, like you hear of SIDS, but I'm like, this is how it happens. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like I was so traumatized from that day, having to do like CPR on my own baby, my own 7-day-old. And whenever we got to the hospital, because of the nature of like us having our other two kids and stuff, like we were kind of a little bit later, specifically me, because I had to wait for like my husband's parents to be able to like come get our kids. I can't remember exactly. It's such a blur. Long story short, we end up being in the NICU with her for 7 days. She had something called Brew or ALTI. It can go either way. Brew is a brief, I'm just going to say ALTI. ALTI is an apparent life-threatening event. That's what it stands for. And it's just essentially when babies do just survive SIDS. And then it happened again to her at about 6 weeks, I want to say, like 6 or 7 weeks old. It happened again. But during that first time, it was very severe. The second time, it was not a big deal. Like she kind of stopped breathing, but she started breathing on her own again. We took her to the hospital. She was fine. But the first time, no one knew what it was. Like no, it was a 7-day-old. We were all so confused. She was on a ventilator. Like she couldn't breathe for herself. We didn't know she was going to make it or not. And on our first day in the NICU, our very first day with our 7-day-old, my husband's boss, the Christians of the church, text them. It's all like, hey, we know that you guys are going through a lot right now, so we wanted to drop off a gift for you guys at the hospital. And my husband's like, no, like this is not the time. Like I don't want to talk to people from this church, because at this point in time, we had left their church. We were still trying to be Christians. We were trying to find other churches, but we had left that church. And my husband was back to working full time for them, but they still were not giving him promotions, not giving him raises, and still all the while knowing where we were financially. Like we couldn't eat. I was eating 1 potato a day just so my kids could eat and fill up their tummies. Like we had no money at all. We had nothing. And it's not like we were like blaming other people, but he stayed at that job because they swore to him, hey, we'll take care of you. Oh, you keep doing this and doing that, and we'll give you that promotion. He would even go to them and say, hey, what do I need to do to earn these promotions? And they just wouldn't give them to him because they just didn't like that we left the church. That was our theory, at least. And their gift confirmed that, because they showed up to the NICU and they're talking to my husband outside. So there's like a glass wall and I'm standing with my baby and I can see my husband and his boss on the other side of this glass wall and they're talking. And I look back down at my baby and she's blue again and she's dying again. And all of a sudden, like in a blink of an eye, there's like 30 nurses and doctors and they're freaking out. And like, I think I got lost in the crowd. Like they didn't even know that I was the mom. Like they just pushed me back and she's dying again. And I was alone. I was completely alone and I couldn't do anything. And so I started yelling at him to come back in and I couldn't get his attention. And she was okay. By the time he got back in, they were able to stabilize her. But he comes back in and he says that they gave us a gift of $1,000, which was great because I was going to pay for all of our bills for that week that we were going to stay with her in that NICU. We wouldn't have to worry about how we were going to pay our bills at least. But they said that they, in their opinion, felt like this was happening to me because God was using this situation to bring me back to church. And it was in that moment for both of us that we realized, like, this is evil. Because it's not even like, first of all, if you leave church, you don't deserve for your children to die. But we weren't even leaving church. We were just leaving their church due to personal family conflicts and stuff like that. And to sit there and say that I deserved to have that happen to my baby, that my baby deserved that, to teach me some sort of lesson, while also giving us $1,000 is such a slap in the face. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't know what it was about that situation. I think it was just me coming face to face and seeing like a baby that close to just dying unnecessarily. It made me start questioning God a lot more. And it made me start questioning my husband start questioning God a lot more too. And it made me start thinking about my own life and the things that I have said are okay and acceptable. And I found the Epicurean paradox. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The Epicurean paradox is the one thing that was the one thing that I needed to fully get away, to fully deconstruct, to fully break free from the cult that we were involved in. And I'm not saying that everyone who's religious is involved in a cult, but we were very much so culty, very much so. The Epicurean paradox is essentially a flow chart that kind of proves that God is either not all powerful, not all loving, or not all good. And it kind of just, in my mind, it gave me the it kind of like showed in a very, what is the word I'm looking for? Like a logical way, like a way that I could understand and a way that I was never able to articulate all of the questions and doubts that I had about God's existence. This flowchart, I mean, it was just crystal clear, perfect. And every single time I would bring up the Epicurean paradox to these people from these churches that I went to who are still trying to win us back, they had no answer. The only answer is, oh, well, you just trust God. You just don't know as much as God. And I'm like, well, like the Epicurean paradox is a paradox for a reason. It's a whole thing that I can get into, but that's kind of what broke us out finally. And we were like, yeah, we can finally say, yeah, we don't believe in God. And we no longer felt shame and fear anymore. And we were able to actually start growing with each other. And I was able to get into therapy finally. And that's just kind of like where we're at now. Right now, I'm still fighting like with the legal justice system, trying to get something done with my case because my biological family still to this day, they threaten me. They threaten to kill me, to kill my family, to kill my dogs and my cats. We moved pretty recently, like about a year or so ago. And when we moved, they instantly sent confirmation that they knew where we lived. Like they sent us our address. I have blocked them on so many accounts. They won't stop making accounts harassing me. My mother has actually even gone as far as she has an entire TikTok account dedicated to exposing me. She shows my mental health records from when I was in foster care, counseling records, all kinds of crazy things that was extremely hard for me to look at. It was so triggering for me to look at. The amount of gaslighting and victim blaming and stuff that she does in her posts and stuff, it really made me question myself, you know.
So you don't have, obviously now you have no relationship with your family. And have they ever met any of your children?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a big one. They met my oldest when she was a baby. This was before I went no contact, and I was still a Christian, like still very much so a good Christian. So I still was
like
wanting
trying to have them. In your life,
like wanting to win them. Right. And, you know, just be that Bible in case they never read it. Right. Like my foster mom said. And my grandpa was, no, it wasn't when my grandpa was dying. I think it was my music director from my old church's like dad was dying or something like that. It was an excuse to be able to go back home because I didn't get to go home a lot. It was actually my friend Rose who asked me to come to this funeral and was like, oh, just use the funeral as an excuse to be able to come out here and hang out with us because like, we both had babies that were the same age. So we wanted to get we were best friends. So we wanted to get our babies together. And so I do. And it was a really fast trip. I was there for 3 days. And I think it was on the second day that I decided to stop by and see my family. And if I'm just being completely honest, I don't know why I did it. I think partially I did it out of curiosity, maybe to see if maybe would this be enough for my mom to like choose me. Yeah, like change and choose me. And also there was part of me that was like, maybe I can just pretend like it didn't happen.
Right.
And like, if I can see them like with my own kid, then I can see that it's actually okay. Like everything was actually okay. And I was just being over dramatic. I can see that they're going to hold her and they're not going to do anything wrong because I wouldn't let that happen. So maybe nothing would have happened to me. I think I was trying to prove something to myself, but I was putting my kid in danger at the very same time. And it wasn't long that they saw her. They only held, like they were never alone with her, nothing like that. I think we were only around them for like 20 minutes in total. And it was a matter of, here's your grandkid, which makes me sick to my stomach that I ever, said that to them, let alone showed them her and let them hold her. And my stepdad held her for a couple minutes, took a couple pictures. And then my mom held her for a couple minutes, took a couple pictures. And then we were out of there. And they don't even know what my other kids look like. I don't have any like personal social media, because I'm terrified of them because they will find any way to try to find me. And it would haunt me for the rest of my life if somehow they were able to get a hold of like recent photos of my children and use that as blackmail against me, which they absolutely would. It's terrifying. But I don't think they know even how many kids I have at this point.
So do you ever fear that they would actually do something to you to hurt you?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. I had a situation happen a couple weeks ago. There's always something, right? Like they're always coming out of the woodworks with a new account saying this or saying that. But my little brother particularly has made threats to me saying that if I don't stop, doing what I'm doing, posting the content that I post, that he will personally hurt me. He will send people to hurt me. And they did call the cops on me one time. My mother actually called our police department and told our police department that I was going to kill myself and kill my kids. And she was concerned for them. I had not spoken to her. She didn't even know how many kids I have not spoken to this woman in over 2 years at this point, or around 2 years at this point. And just because people are saying what she did is bad. And I'm sitting here anonymously, not attaching her name, nothing to my story. She called my police department and told them that. The police came to my house like randomly in the middle of the day. I've got 3 little girls. It's just me home alone because my husband's at work. And now I've got these 2 police officers outside of my door, hands on their guns, because they think that I'm going to kill myself or my kids. Mm. And once I explain the situation to them and I ask, okay, so like now you understand the whole situation. What can you do to protect me? Nothing.
Yeah.
They just have to keep calling the police department. And then it's up to the police department to press charges on them for making false reports.
Right.
My best bet is at this point, like a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And that just doesn't feel fair.
Right.
And it's one of those things that I'm going to do because I want to be an example for survivors that, of all walks of life, of, intrafamilial child torture, child sexual abuse, child abuse in general, all of the spectrum that trauma is. And no matter, like I said earlier, if your ankle's sprained or broken, I want to show that you're allowed to feel however you feel about what you went through. And there's also so much greater like healing on the other side too, because as hard as like all of it has been, I have realized that, like I said earlier, my mother completely took away all of my self-esteem. I had nothing left. Like I was a completely broken puddle when I went to therapy. And that was the explanation for, like all of my hardships in my relationships and me struggling with my own emotional regulation and being able to be the best mom that I can be. It took me going to therapy and having somebody say, hey, these things that you're saying actually weren't a big deal, is actually like the biggest reason that you're acting this way. Mm-hmm. It's actually the biggest reason that you're behaving this way, because small things like consistent betrayal really, really does damage a child's brain.
Yeah.
And it makes us keep looking for like chaos in places that we don't need to.
Yeah. And by making the decisions that you're making, you're breaking this generational curse per se, this cycle. And that's all that you can do now. And like you said, become this advocate for everything that you've been through and speak out against it. And, obviously when you do that, there's people that are going to be in that crossfire, whether that's your siblings involved and your parents. But unfortunately, like that's your reality. That's what happened to you. And everyone has a right to have their own voice and to speak out against it. And you should never feel guilty or shameful for doing so. And it's so sad that the foster family encouraged you not to move forward. I don't understand that at all. I mean, obviously they have their own issues and beliefs. But yeah, that's heartbreaking as well. And like you said, you made a good point. It shouldn't even have been a decision that was up to them or up to you. Like that should have been something that as soon as that was known, that's action that they should have taken, in their position. I also wanted to ask you, did you tell your husband right away, everything that had happened to you?
Oh, yeah. Like I didn't go into detail.
Okay.
But when meeting my husband was funny, I didn't like him at first at all. So like, I guess no, not at first, because I didn't give him a chance at first. Okay. I thought he was weird, very homeschooled. Mm-hmm. He was homeschooled. And I really actually, like at first I wasn't there really to date because like I had just gotten out of that really bad relationship with that guy so much older than me. And he was like a youth pastor. And I was a little bit scared. And I just kind of wanted to date God, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Like it was just me and Jesus. And that's all it was. So the semester that I met my husband, I was not interested at all. He had like tried to message me or something. And he was like, weird. I'm going to talk shit on my husband. Okay. Homeschooled weird. Mm-hmm. He took screenshots of my Instagram stories and texted them to me. So like, instead of swiping up like a normal person, he would screenshot it. I'm so serious. I'm so serious. I said, don't ever talk to me again. I'm so serious. I said that to him. I said, do not ever talk to me again.
Oh my God.
You are weird.
Poor guy.
Yeah. I broke his heart that day. But then I ended up having to have a lumpectomy later that summer. And I didn't have anybody that was like supporting me or anything, it was like everybody like knew what I was going through. Everybody knew that I was like scared because I didn't know if it was like cancer or not. And the only person that I had like physically with me was Riley's mom, Paige. Mm-hmm. And she's such a great support. Like she's amazing, literally a saint. The Huxes are saints. Yeah. But during that time, like I was like really sad because I was just kind of throwing a pity party. I'm like, nobody's even checking in on me. Like I just had surgery and nobody's even checking in on me. And then I get a text message from my husband, from Aiden. And he's like, hey, like I saw your post on Facebook.
Here's a screenshot.
Yeah, seriously. No, actually though. I bet he does like have it like back in his files. I bet he does. But yeah, he's like, I just want to let you know that I'm praying for you and I'm really sorry. And I was like, wow, he's the only person, the same person that I was like, leave me alone, you weirdo. He's the only person. And so I was like, fine, I guess I'll give you a chance, you know? So we ended up dating like really quickly after that because, you know, the Christian scene and stuff. And looking back, like he is absolutely my person and I love him so much. Okay. And like, I feel like we're like siblings, but like not in a weird way. Like he's like my best friend, like genuinely. I feel like he's like the male version of myself.
Like your other half.
Exactly. And it's like, we have come through so much. Like it's not been easy. We hated each other, genuinely. We were like riding on the brink of divorce for so long because it was like, we couldn't tell like if the other person was the issue or are we just going through a lot of shit right now.
Right.
And it took so long to realize like, we are just going through a lot of shit right now. Like you grew up in this Christian environment. I grew up in this toxic, broken environment. I mean, like, and your environment comes with its broken toxicness too. And then we both get thrown into this cult that we like dive head first into. And then our brains are like spun this way and that way. And now we're breaking out of it. And it's like,
well, you had, you know, no therapy at that point. You had no time to heal. None. You were just a broken person trying to make it through different chapters in life. It's like you kept going through these different chapters, some good, some better, some worse. And it's like you never really had that time to sort through it and talk about it and heal from it and even know really what was happening and why it happened. And I feel like, I mean, you said the therapy was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, February. It's literally just been as of like, I think January or February, but literally this year and I'm still in therapy. There's still things that she has to be like, hey, this is not normal.
And I was going to say too, you know, therapy isn't a quick fix. It's something that you are unraveling years and years of trauma and life experiences. And it's not supposed to be something that's quick.
Yep. But I thought it was. I told my husband, I was like, yeah, I'll probably only be in therapy for like a year.
Right. But, and there's nothing wrong with being in it as long as you need to for the rest of your life. I think therapy is amazing. And I think you should always have somebody that you can talk to that has that unbiased opinion, but also is educated to know why these things happen and, you know, can really just help you understand it as well and sort through it and feel validated in a healthy way of like, you know, so that you gain that understanding because, you know, we can only blame people for so long. And while yes, like the people you mentioned that did what they did to you, they should be blamed for it. There comes a point in your life where you can't blame anymore for your own mental health. Yes. You know what I mean? You kind of have to start.
I was spiraling. Like I was like the poster child for that. And it was so frustrating because I was like, I was trying so hard to get into therapy. Well, when I could feel my downward spiral starting was I think it was like probably triggered by like the event with our youngest daughter, you know, and then like coming out of the church and all of that. Like it was like a lot. And I lost myself. And it was like the beginning of that year. I think it was like March of whatever year it was. But I texted like all of my friends and I was like, I'm not me. I don't know who I am. I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm scared to be an atheist. I don't know what I believe in. I don't know where to look. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's up, what's down. I don't know anything. But what I do know right now is I cannot be a good friend. So I'll talk to you guys once I get my shit sorted out because I've got to focus on me and my family right now because I'm not who I need to be, not only for myself, but for them. Like I have a lot of work to not become like the people who raised me, and I'm not doing a good job of that right now. And so most of my friends were like, yeah, like that's totally fine. Like I totally get it. You know, we'll be here for you whenever you feel like, you know, you're ready to, you know, sort through this and stuff. And I really appreciated that because that is what I needed, as I needed no more outside voices. I needed just my own, just talking to me about what happened with me and figuring it out myself, because I had spent my entire life looking at everybody else to tell me if this was right or wrong. And I needed what my therapist did to say, well, how did it feel? And she completely changed my life. Like, seriously, like I would not be where I am without her. Like, literally all credit goes to my therapist. She is an amazing, amazing, amazing person. So incredibly patient. I have nothing but raves for my therapist. Like, she has given me that confidence that I needed in myself. I felt like I really struggled with and this is probably something so many survivors struggle with, is like imposter syndrome. And that I feel like stems from that whole well, others have had it worse and stuff. And she has really helped to bring me back down and say, just because somebody else might have had it worse, it doesn't matter, because that wasn't your situation.
Yeah.
This was your situation. And we can see, no matter if somebody had it worse and dealt with it better, we can see that this is your situation and this is how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
And these are things that we can do to help. And medication has obviously been a huge part of that. And I was very hesitant to start medication because I didn't want to be dependent on something for the rest of my life, possibly. But my therapist really helped me realize that it's like a tool. So I have PTSD and MDD, and I struggle with my PTSD through it manifests a lot as a lot of emotional flashbacks and anxiety. And then my depression is depression, and I can't get out of bed sometimes. I'm lucky to brush my teeth in a week if it's bad, and medication has completely it's brought me back up to a baseline, I think. And it's I'm able to wake up and not just want to die, not feel like I have to, not feel like that would be better for everybody that I love, because I just can't get a grip on anything. And then because now that medication has helped me, I guess, hormonally or whatever, emotionally, come to this baseline level, I'm able to be more present in therapy and be more present in my day-to-day life to see what are my triggers, when I'm get irritated at my husband, is it because he did something wrong, or is it because I saw maybe my stepdad in him,
right? Or
I saw somebody else in him, or I was triggered. And it used to be that I would blame him for that, right? Well, you shouldn't have done that to upset me. When in reality, it's no, I need to figure out why is this upsetting me, and working through it. And I used to be scared of that. I used to be, I guess, scared of the accountability because of the whole, it's not my fault. They did it to me. I didn't do this to myself. But it's just, that's part of being a survivor. It's not fair. But the only person that will save you is you. And the only person that can save you is you. And it's not fair. It's not. We deserve to have somebody come and put us to sleep and fix up our heart. And then we wake up and we're fine again. But that's just not what's going to happen. Yeah. We have to be able to look at our behavior and ask ourselves, where did it stem from, if we want to actually make lasting change?
You're incredible.
No.
Yes. No, I'm serious. I give you so much credit. It's insane to me. Even what I was telling you before, the fact that you can sit here and, first of all, the fact that you can sit here and go through everything and recite it. And obviously I know there's throughout different points you got emotional, but you're so strong, and it takes so much vulnerability and strength. And then even through all this, still being threatened and, everything else, and having to recount such traumatic events that happened to you. And like we were just saying, you haven't been on your healing journey per se for that long. So to be able to do all this and do it in such a informative way is so incredible. And you're going to change so many lives by advocating for yourself and sharing your story. And then on top of it, now you serve a whole different purpose, because now you have 3 daughters. And at one point, you were one of those little girls. So now it's almost it's your job to protect them and to speak out against what happened to you, and be almost as dark as it is. It's so much, in my opinion, it's so much more important to be transparent and open about it, because I feel that's the way to cut that cycle and to just stop it. And, one day I'm sure your girls are going to ask about your childhood and what happened. And, like I said, it's dark and it's scary, and it might be something that in some days you might want to hide some of the truth of it. And that's totally up to you. But at the same time, this happens to people all the time, unfortunately. And I think the more that we speak about it and speak out against it, and almost combat the fear of, the threats, and even the fear that you might have within yourself of, well, what are people going to think and say, and the judgment that people have, which is just a whole nother thing. But, it says so much that you're willing to just stand up and I don't want to say own it, but speak out about it and speak against it and just be so open and vulnerable. I give you so much credit. Like, you really are incredible.
I've always just like, this is genuinely what I've always wanted to do. Like, when I first like realized like things weren't quite right and stuff. And like I've said, like the brainwashing just never worked on me. I always wanted to be able to take the bad and try to turn it into something good. And like, I don't know, like I would rather it be me that just puts all of my shit on the table and let everybody throw their shit at me. If that means that those like 100 other girls who aren't ready to come forward and talk about their stuff, they might go talk to somebody else at least, right? They'll see like, hey, what I went through is worthy of talking about it. And it is.
Yeah.
And it does not take anybody else to tell you that it is. If you feel like it is, then it is.
And I appreciate you being so raw and open, especially on my platform and just in general. It takes a lot. It's not easy. And you're just, I don't know. I think you're incredible and you're amazing. And I can't thank you enough. Seriously.
And thank you for having me, Deborah.
Of course.
I've had a blast.
Good. You did so good.